The cold dungeon floor was littered with the bodies of his fallen companions. They lay scattered in deep pools of blood, leaving him to wonder about his destiny. Could he ever become a truly strong hunter, or was he just a merciless monster? Just a few short hours before this tragedy occurred, the guild hall was peaceful. Honestly, trying to secure a decent quest back then was an absolute nightmare. Because of this, some solo players struggled to find any available missions. Many players were simply choosing quests, chatting, and exchanging opinions with others. Soon they noticed a lonely healer, whom absolutely nobody wanted to invite on their missions. He looked incredibly lonely, knowing that no group would ever agree to take him. Suddenly, someone called out. He turned and saw two players approaching him directly. It turned out these two companions had been actively looking for him across the hall. The young healer greeted them warmly, offering congratulations on their recent big promotion. Thankfully, the girl thanked him, explaining they wanted him to join their next run. They came specifically to invite him along, prompting the young man to share some news. He suggested a low-difficulty portal they could easily clear together as a team. However, the young healer honestly admitted that his support skills were still quite weak. With limited healing abilities, he openly worried about holding his two friends back during combat. They told him to stop worrying and join, since he still held a license. Soon, they arrived at the dungeon entrance hidden somewhere along the busy city streets. This specific raid zone was of normal difficulty, with a strict limit of 10 players. Inside, they quickly took down a terrifying beast, leaving it dead on the ground. Only one monster remained, and the party prepared to handle it easily as well. Everything was going incredibly smoothly, as the entire team fought with perfect, flawless coordination. Our young healer activated his skills, restoring their health while boosting their overall power. This allowed his companions to focus entirely on dealing massive damage to the enemy. As they pushed forward against the monster, every single move aligned perfectly with their strategy. Now watch closely, this is where they decide to switch up their entire strategy. They absolutely needed to strike first, giving their dangerous enemy no time to react at all. Unleashing her power, the girl prepared to strike with a devastating magical attack. She directed this immense magical force straight at the target to freeze it. The beast froze in place, prompting one of the melee players to use his charge. Using his newly acquired skill, the swordsman dashed forward with incredible speed. He delivered a single, heavy sword strike meant to end this fight immediately. The healer watched closely, completely amazed at how much stronger his trusted ally had become. With one clean, precise slice, the beast's massive head flew off and exploded. Its body burst into pieces, leaving behind valuable loot on the dungeon floor. Our young hero felt a wave of deep sadness, doubting he could ever match them. He wondered if he would ever reach their level of power as a player. Soon, the remains of the monster scattered into dust before the entire group. A high-quality sword and a magic stone dropped right where the creature had died. These valuable trophies belonged to them now, and the swordsman grabbed the stone. It was a rare artifact, sure to be highly useful in future battles. Next, the victorious player picked up the newly dropped sword to inspect its overall craftsmanship. The young man carefully appraised the blade, finding its stats to be quite decent. However, he did not have any immediate use for a weapon like that. In the end, they decided to hand the sword over to the healer. The weapon had pretty solid stats, making it super useful for their future adventures. The healer accepted the gift with a massive grin. He definitely wanted a fine blade like this. Take it, the swordsman urged. He wanted him to have it so he could boost his strength, making him a much more reliable member of the party. With the dungeon fully cleared, the group prepared to head back to the city. Their mission was a wrap, and the party was already making their way out, casually chatting about future plans, when suddenly the mage girl caught a strange sound echoing from deep within the ruins. But the others kept talking, completely missing the warning she tried to give them. Suddenly, a beast burst straight out of the wall. It had been perfectly camouflaged against the stone, staying completely invisible to the party until this exact moment. Instantly, the group scrambled to draw their weapons, realizing they could no longer just walk away. Now it was brutally clear that they were dealing with a deadly hidden boss, an enemy that only decided to show up after the main mission ended. Right before them, a completely bizarre, terrifying monster took shape. Its stone shell shattered, revealing a literal demon standing right in front of them. This massive boss wielded a deadly, long weapon that looked like a giant scythe. Secret bosses were completely unheard of in normal-level dungeons, but there is always a first time for everything, even a deadly encounter. The young swordsmen declared they had to fight. Winning meant making an absolute fortune. But the healer desperately tried to stop them, warning his friends that hidden bosses are on a completely different level of danger. Yet the group felt confident that their numbers would carry them to victory. The swordsman suggested they play it safe and analyze the monster first. But their axe-wielding companion was way too cocky, shouting that they had absolutely nothing to fear from this enemy. The young warrior was totally convinced that a hidden boss in a basic dungeon could not possibly be that tough. Even though the others were pretty hesitant, he bragged that he would show them exactly how to destroy this boss single-handedly. He quickly activated his skills and marched right up to face the demon head-on. Yet the boss just stood there, completely still, not moving an inch. Too quiet, it was incredibly suspicious, and the swordsman knew these monsters are never as simple as they look, but the aggressive axe-wielder told him to stop worrying and quit being such a coward. In the blink of an eye, he charged forward, glowing with magical energy. The dungeon boss simply activated a glowing, protective barrier, remaining completely calm and motionless. Meanwhile, the attacker took a running leap, pushing off the ground and raising his heavy axe to split the monster's head. He was right in front of the beast when it suddenly raised its own massive weapon, leaving him absolutely no room to dodge or pull back. A single, brutal swing of that giant blade was all it took to instantly end his life. The entire party froze in pure horror, watching their teammate die in seconds. The swordsman screamed at the mage girl to cast her spells and reveal the She immediately activates her foresight skill to gauge the hidden boss's actual stats. Her magical field slowly expands to measure how powerful this enemy really is. It reaches the hidden boss, and what she sees leaves a terrifying impression. This monster's stats are absolutely insane, completely out of this world. She collapses to the ground, realizing their entire group is about to die. Seeing her panic, the swordsman steps in and tries to calm her down. He urges her to breathe and explain exactly what she just saw. The boss's health is low, but his other stats are off the charts. They are dozens of times higher than average, which sounds completely impossible. It feels like the mage must have made a mistake in her calculations. But she is too terrified to even stand, trembling on the floor. She is totally paralyzed, convinced that there is no way they survive this. Still, the swordsman tells everyone to keep their heads and stay calm. He reasons that it is still just one enemy, no matter how strong. If they work together as a tight unit, they still have a fighting chance. The boss might have high numbers, but he is definitely not invincible. As long as they can dodge his heavy attacks, they can survive. Meanwhile, the hidden boss just stands there, completely still. He makes no move to strike, just towering over them with quiet menace. A massive muscular beast boasting 5 glowing eyes and sharp horns. The swordsman rallies the party, promising they will make it out alive. He insists this is their only shot, and they have to take it. Now let us see if this desperate plan actually works. The young leader activates his core skills and prepares for the clash. He commands everyone to get ready as the boss quietly waits. The monster stands inside his protective aura, calmly watching their every move. Suddenly, the team charges forward, launching a coordinated, all-out strike. They focus on hitting fast while keeping ready to dodge any counter. The giant waits until they get close, then swings his massive axe. That blow sends them flying, but the female hunter quickly fires back. She unleashes blazing fire to back up her struggling teammates. Spells and projectiles rain down, triggering deafening explosions everywhere. They realize that if they maintain this pressure, victory is actually possible. The mage shouts that the boss's health has dropped to 50%. They need to push harder, and the swordsman commands them to keep going. Do not back down, keep attacking, dodge his strikes, and stay focused. He warns everyone to stay sharp and protect their healer at all costs. Leading by example, the captain charges back in for a decisive blow. The monster's defensive field finally shatters under the intense pressure. Our swordsman leaps in to deliver a devastating, final sword strike. Behind him, the mages and healers pour all their remaining magic in. Another wave of blazing fire crashes down directly on the beast. The entire area turns into a raging inferno of blinding flames. No matter how insane his stats are, he cannot survive this. Within seconds, the battlefield is completely engulfed in fire. Heavy smoke and flames covered the field, leaving the players blind to the enemy's condition. To their horror, the massive explosions didn't seem to leave a single scratch. Right on cue, the hidden boss launched a brutal counterattack of his own. Hold the line, they knew the monster's health wasn't completely infinite. They were actually chipping away quite a bit of its health. Then the hidden boss stood tall, raising his frame to prepare something massive. He thrust his hands forward, gathering a volatile swirl of raw energy. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he unleashed a devastating shockwave at them. The swordsman braced himself. This was clearly the boss's ultimate rage skill. Rampage mode, the healer had honestly never even heard of such a thing. He figured a hidden boss would just go down like any other enemy. But Rampage is a deadly state, triggered only when health drops dangerously low. It shoots the boss's stats through the roof, making him twice as dangerous. It is an incredibly rare mechanic that very few high-level bosses actually possess. Honestly, with stats boosted that high, things were looking pretty grim for the squad. Not the swordsman, he still believed they had one last shot. He saw a tiny opening to pool his remaining strength for one final strike. Taking down a rampaging hidden boss now sounded completely insane and highly unlikely. Crazy, yes, but they had to try something to survive. He knew they would never find out unless they put everything on the line. The mage girl nodded, promising to back him up with every shred of her mana. Closing her eyes, she began chanting to funnel all her supporting spells into him. With her magical buffs flooding his veins, the swordsman gripped his blade tightly. He braced his footing, aiming to end this fight with one decisive swing. He lunged straight at the hidden boss, hoping to catch him off guard. But the boss reacted instantly, swinging his weapon to intercept the incoming blade. Metal clashed, the boss blocked his strike before it could land. The hidden boss floated back up into the air, creating a brief, tense pause. The swordsman knew this split second was their only real window to strike. No weapon, no problem. The boss had no intention of losing. His dark aura flared intensely, expanding right before their very eyes. That small sphere of magic had transformed into a massive, glowing ball of destruction. The young swordsman barely managed to throw himself out of the blast zone. He was furious, dodging all day wouldn't win this fight. He was completely on the defensive, unable to land any meaningful damage. That's when the mage girl activated her red lotus spell, aiming directly at the boss. The spell connected beautifully, catching the boss completely off guard. The sheer force of her magic blasted the monster backward, knocking him off balance. Seizing the moment, the swordsman barked out orders to keep the pressure on. He planned to use the rising smoke and flames as cover to close the distance. Keeping his head low, the young warrior charged right through the blazing heat. He leaped toward the blinded boss, raising his heavy sword for one final blow. A massive blinding explosion tore through the arena, lighting up the entire room. Total silence fell. Nobody knew who survived that massive blast. No one could survive that, but who was left standing? Completely engulfed, flames roar and hope finally rises among the players. They celebrate, joy sweeps through, convinced the nightmare is finally over. Their opponent is down, the swordsman gasps, leaning heavily on his blade. He smiles under his breath, proud to have finally finished the beast. Suddenly, a sharp scream cuts through the cheering as the mage girl points ahead. The boss is still alive, and everyone else sees it now. Right inside the raging inferno, a silhouette stands completely untouched. She frantically screams to her companions that the monster is still breathing. They have to keep attacking, but the creature is ready to strike. He lets out a terrifying shriek that rattles everyone to their core. To their absolute, chilling horror, the hidden boss lacks a single scratch. In the blink of an eye, the creature vanishes, appearing right before her. One clean swipe, and her severed head rolls across the cold stone floor. The rest of the party freezes in shock, unable to process what just happened. And this is where things get absolutely hopeless. They cannot survive this. The captain snaps, screaming at them to stop freezing and run for it. But escape is impossible. The creature is already moving right toward them. He targets the girl with fire magic next, closing the gap instantly. With just bare claws, he tears her apart without even trying. Absolute panic sets in. Nobody knows what to do or how to survive this. The monster stands right there, reaching out with a massive, clawed hand. His speed is terrifying, leaping around like a literal blur. Leaping from player to player, he slaughters them without missing a beat. Only the captain is left standing, staring in absolute disbelief at the carnage. His entire squad was brutally wiped out right before his very eyes. Now the desperate captain charges forward, throwing everything into one last attack. Even if it is useless, he refuses to just stand there and die. But the boss won't even deign to touch him, unleashing raw magical power. A single, precise blast hits the swordsman directly, tearing him apart instantly. Nobody could survive that. The captain is literally shattered. His broken sword falls, piercing deep into the stone floor. The sword lands right at the healer's feet as he freezes in horror. Every single teammate he ever cleared a dungeon with is now dead. He can't even move, let alone fight back, but the boss waits. Leaving him for last was intentional. He is just the weak, useless healer. A burden, someone everyone always sneered at and treated like garbage. Nobody ever wanted to carry dead weight or waste time protecting him. Other players hated wasting precious resources on a guy like him. They saw him as completely worthless. That was basically his entire life. Constant insults like weakling, loser, and a total waste of space. Being treated like trash was his normal. He was completely used to it. Now even this monstrous hidden boss stares down at him with contempt. Looking up, he spots the fallen blade, and a sudden thought hits him. Maybe his dead friends believed in him. Maybe he can actually do this. He just needs to reach out, grab the hilt and fight, but he knows reality. He was about to die with no way out. Still, he had to try. Even a hopeless struggle was better than nothing. The young healer dragged himself up. From his knees, grabbed his dead friend's sword, and swore to fight till the end. The hidden boss stared at him, amused, a creepy smile plastered across its face. If this was his final moment, he wanted to go down swinging, not begging. No one actually wants to die, of course, but the situation was completely hopeless. He was cornered, staring straight into the abyss with absolutely nowhere left to run. He could let them slaughter him like prey, or face death with a weapon in hand. Making his choice, the young healer raised the heavy blade and braced himself. Sword in hand, he charged at the massive boss, but the monster was too fast. It swatted him away like a fly before he could even land a strike. Yet the healer refused to go down alone. He lunged forward one last time and managed to plunge the blade deep into the beast by some absolute miracle. His strike pierced the monster directly in the heart, making it scream in agony. With the sword buried in its chest, the boss retaliated with a devastating counterattack. The healer took the full force of the blow. He knew his time was up. But a strange peace washed over him. At least he had avenged his fallen team. Now they could rest, but suddenly the monster's body began to react weirdly. Crackling blue lightning and intense electricity started exploding from the creature's chest. A blinding white light engulfed the entire room, leaving the young man completely disoriented. He figured this was death, that these strange sensations were just the afterlife taking hold. Opening his eyes, he expected his old friends to be waiting for him. But when he finally woke up, he noticed he was wearing his same clothes. He figured the afterlife would look different, meaning he was somehow still alive. Right then, a glowing dungeon notification materialized floating in front of him. System messages congratulated him on his impossible achievement. He had actually cleared the dungeon. Defeating the secret boss against all odds, his reward was a legendary new sword. He gained a rare sword, but then the vision shifted to the boss's hand. Sharp, bloody claws gripped a fresh human heart, pulsing slowly in the dark. The monster was going to consume it, to absorb the dead hunter's powers. Crouched over the lifeless body, the beast greedily devoured the still-beating heart. He watched in sheer horror as his close friend was butchered and consumed. Having finished his gruesome meal, the creature slowly turned its sights on him. Blood covered its face, and a single, glowing eye locked onto the terrified healer. Step by step, it closed the distance, raising a massive clawed hand above him. Paralyzed by fear, the boy could only watch as his executioner prepared to strike. Suddenly he gasped, his eyes flying open as he jolted awake from the nightmare. His own scream echoed in the quiet room. He sat up, drenched in cold sweat. He tried to calm his racing heart. This same terrifying dream kept repeating every single night. His life had become an endless cycle of dread. Let's introduce our main character. Meet Chen Jan. He is a healer, but his active skills are basically useless. Because of that, no adventuring party ever wanted to recruit him for a run. A few weeks ago, his only true friends brought him along to a high-risk dungeon. They sacrificed their lives to save him, leaving Chen Jan as the sole survivor. Guild barely looked into the tragedy, brushing it off as another failed raid. People now called him the cursed healer, fully convinced of his guilt. They believed Chen Jian did not deserve to live while his comrades died. Shamed and isolated, he was completely out of work and dead broke. He desperately needed to buy water, and his apartment was a mess. It looked like a trash heap, and he had almost no clothes left. Nobody in the guild would work with him, leaving him entirely broke. Chen Jian threw on his old jacket, pulling the hood low over his eyes. He did not want any passers-by recognizing his face on the street. Keeping his head down, he tried his best to avoid any attention. He only walked to a nearby grocery store just around the corner. The goal was simple: slip inside, grab his things, and stay unnoticed. He quickly chose his groceries while overhearing some quiet chatter nearby. The other shoppers were gossiping about the latest major news. Two guys were discussing a brutal dungeon massacre from a few weeks back. They whispered that only one healer survived, claiming he was the real killer. They believed he slaughtered his own team to steal all the rewards. The guys insisted this shocking rumor was absolutely true. One of them heard it directly from his brother in the guild. Chen Jian quietly stood there as they dragged his name through the dirt, realizing everyone now wanted him dead. Even these random guys in the store seemed ready to attack him. Believing they could easily take him, they laughed. Chen Jian approached the register. He placed his items down. The cashier cheerfully began scanning them. She cheerfully asked how he would pay and handed over the card terminal. Chen Jian swiped his card, but the machine immediately flashed an error. Insufficient funds. He did not even have enough money for basic food. He was starving, so he settled for a single loaf of bread. It was all he could afford. He stepped back onto the streets. Looking up at the clear sky, he watched the busy crowds passing by. A brief sense of peace washed over him, but dread soon followed. He knew no normal raid team would ever recruit him to make a living. With no real friends left, he had to figure out his next move. Left with absolutely no money, only one dangerous option remained open to him. Chen Jian knew he had to venture into a dungeon completely alone. This artificial beginner instance was located right in the center of the city. It was designed for novice hunters to practice using their new skills safely. He headed straight there, desperate for a safe place to fight. Chen Jian reached the portal, knowing this low rank matched his status. He could easily handle a level 0 dungeon, even as a healer. Sure, the reward for finishing it was tiny, but it was better than nothing. The payout was absolute pocket change, but it was still actual money. He was not in any position to be picky about dungeons right now. One thing was absolutely certain in his current miserable situation. Surviving this cheap dungeon was his only ticket to avoiding starvation. Suddenly, too, hunters spotted Chen Jian, immediately recognizing him as that useless, cursed healer. Other players instantly recognized Chen Jian, that supposedly useless healer. No one could tell what led him straight into the basic beginner's dungeon. After all, everyone knew he was completely useless in a fight, yet he stepped inside anyway. He ignored their opinions. Chen Jian was starting over. He was entirely on his own now, totally done with caring about what others thought. Suddenly, a bright glowing screen popped up directly in front of him. It welcomed him to the beginner's dungeon, but something felt incredibly off about this notification. He had never seen a screen like this before. Then, it updated. Due to some unexpected system testing, he was being redirected. He was entering evolution mode instead, a special compensation. A massive desert wasteland with towering cliffs materialized all around him. Across the horizon, a dark red sun was slowly rising from behind the jagged mountains. He used to dream about epic trials, surrounded by dangerous monsters, standing proud and completely unstoppable, but this felt entirely different. Besides, Chen Jian had never even heard of evolution mode. The visibility was awful. Thick red fog choked everything. Suddenly, the rusted blade he was holding began to vibrate and hum with a strange, heavy power. Right before his eyes, the weapon evolved into a massive, deadly sword. Chen Jian realized his weapon was causing all these crazy changes. Gripping the hilt, he decided to venture deeper into the wasteland. And trust me, what happens next is definitely going to test his limits. A new screen flashed. It was time for a quick test. His objective was to destroy 100 earth elementals. 100. A normal trial would only spawn about 3 of them. This was bad, very bad, and then a shadow loomed. A massive rock monster materialized right in front of him, an earth elemental. Chen Zhan stared in shock, since when were they this huge? The creature towered over him like a literal mountain of stone. Its raw crushing power was off the charts. Still, the young warrior quickly noticed a massive flaw in its design. The massive, rocky beast was incredibly slow. Having a hunter's license and weapon ready, he braced himself. This wasn't going to be easy, but he wasn't about to back down. Glancing up at the elemental's immense stature, he decided he could easily take it on. It was still just a beginner's dungeon, or so he hoped. Rather than relying on his weapon, Chen Zhan decided to test out his raw strength first. Slapping his sword back into its sheath, he raised his bare fists. He was desperate to find out just how powerful his opponent really was before attacking. Chen Zhan threw a heavy punch. The monster lunged back at him. The pure difference in size was absolutely hilarious, like comparing a tiny pea to a giant watermelon. But the young man didn't care, launching his strike with full force. In a real fight, size doesn't mean a thing without speed and technique. But after a few quick exchanges, reality hit. The rock elemental was way tougher than he first assumed. His bare fists weren't going to cut it, and defeating this colossus required a real edge. It was time to bring that newly evolved blade back into action. As the monster lunged, Chen Zhan raised his glowing sword to block. He made things very clear. He was not going down easily. The young man leaps forward, landing several swift, precise blade strikes. The beast crumbles. Chen Zhan suddenly feels a very strange sensation. Felt like his power was surging, or was it just his imagination? With the monster dead, the young hunter quickly scans the area. He knows he cannot stop. He must find the next target. The earth elementals do not keep him waiting. They are already here. There are no breaks here. Realizing this, Chen Zhan decides to make a move. He decides to test his active healing skills. They are crucial now. It works. The young man clearly feels his core strength rising. Not only that, his speed and stability are way better too. This comes just in time. The entire area is crawling with monsters. They block his path, but their numbers do not scare him. Their power is nothing. He slices through them, leveling up constantly. He dominates. Each kill turns this brutal fight into a breeze. Only one remains. Just one last earth elemental stands before him. The 100th monster crumbles. Finally, he feels a wave of real confidence. Yet just a short while ago, he stood overwhelmed before this crowd. He had stood there terrified, but instead, Chen Zhan cut every single monster down. With every sword swing, he feels his hunter skills growing rapidly. His strength and agility are shooting up right before his eyes. What once seemed completely impossible and unreal is now just a basic reality. Of course, that does not mean he was entirely relaxed out there. Defeating 100 giant earth elementals is no easy task. Standing among the shattered stone bodies, he leans heavily on his sword. Suddenly, a system notification pops up. The first trial is officially complete. A reward is waiting. Chen Zhan lets out a sigh of relief. It was exhausting. He is pretty rusty, and his body feels it. Finally, he can leave this place in peace, or so he thinks. But wait, because the game is never going to let him rest. New task, he must now destroy 100 water elementals. For completing that first test, he receives a single earth essence as well. This is the only prize. Chen Zhan has never even heard of it. Honestly, it is a pretty weird reward for defeating so many monsters. The earth essence is basically highly concentrated, crystallized earth energy. It radiates a heavy, powerful aura, fusing directly into his main blade. But what does it actually do? Chen Zhan has no time to wonder. He must focus. He does not know how tough the next trial is. The upcoming task could be 10 times harder, and he knows it. If this gets any worse, he might actually die in this dungeon. Suddenly, everything lights up. A blinding white flash illuminates the entire area. It is like sudden lightning, forcing the young man to shield his eyes. He covers his face, completely lost as to what is happening. Looking around, he realizes a freezing snowstorm is beginning to howl. Wild events just keep happening, constantly pushing his limits in this place. Along with a bloody mist, while the boy quietly caught falling snowflakes in his bare hands. Chen Zhan recalled his primary mission. He had to track down and destroy water elementals. Since snow is frozen water, this sudden shift in the weather meant trouble. Danger was brewing. The cold flakes changed rapidly. They crystallized into heavy, jagged hailstones, raining down like sharp pieces of ice. Frozen shards pelted the ground, but instead of shattering, they began to gather. The ice pieces fused. Chenjin braced himself. He knew this wasn't ordinary snow, and he had to prepare for battle. Within moments, the massive chunks of ice merged, and the young warrior watched a shape form. A giant silhouette materialized. These were no longer harmless flakes or simple shards. Before him stood a colossal water elemental, looming high over the young man. Chenjin knew this monster would be incredibly tough. One look at its massive frame confirmed his opponent possessed overwhelming power. The beast lunged, but the warrior reacted instantly. Dodging the blow, the agile Chenjin leaped swiftly to the side. He repositioned himself right behind the towering monster and immediately began his counterattack. But as his blade struck, Chenjin realized his attacks were completely useless. Frustrated, he couldn't cut through its watery frame. He swung his weapon again and again, but the creature remained completely unharmed. He urgently needed a completely new strategy, but the stubborn warrior refused to give up. Desperately, he tried to analyze why his physical strikes were completely failing. Attacking relentlessly over and over, the young warrior finally managed to inflict some actual damage. But now he finally understood the frustrating truth behind the monster's invincibility. The water elemental possessed insane regeneration, instantly healing any damage he dealt. Much like an earth elemental, this icy behemoth came equipped with a massive defense rating. On top of that tough skin, its passive healing kept restoring its liquid body. Doubt crept in. He was losing faith in his ability to win. Honestly, you can't blame him for starting to wonder if he could even survive this. He hated to admit it, but the terrifying thought of dying kept creeping in. It weighed heavily on Chenjin's mind, but right in the middle of his despair. A system alert flashed. There was still hope. He could actually fuse his weapon with the earth essence. Chenjin hesitated. He had no clue where this desperate gamble would lead, but he needed a miracle. Without wasting another second, the young man confirmed the high-stakes elemental fusion. He was losing anyway. He had nothing left to lose. He quickly channeled the heavy earth essence directly into his blade, but nothing seemed to happen. Then a bright system alert popped up, confirming the fusion was a success. His sword had unlocked an incredible new ability, petrification. This incredible power would apply a heavy freezing effect, drastically slowing down his opponent's movements. This was the perfect break. His confidence surged back. Now he actually stood a fighting chance to break through that crazy regeneration. Unleashing a fierce attack, his newly infused blade struck, and the fluid monster began to petrify. Massive ice elemental turned completely to stone, freezing helplessly in place. Chenjin struck with total confidence, stopping its healing. With one final strike, he shattered the frozen monster into 1,000 pieces. Shattered, his foes were reduced to countless scattered fragments yet again. Chenjin kept actively tearing them all apart. He could win this. He finally knew he could see the fight through. The size difference was lopsided, absolutely ridiculous, but he did not care. He struck back. Chenjin launched relentless attacks one after another. He froze the elementals solid, then delivered brutal slashing blows. Splitting them, finally, this exhausting mission was close to an end. Not a single monster remained in sight. The young man could finally breathe. He sighed. However, the quest still demanded 100 kills. He was still short by one final kill, yet the area lay completely empty. No other monsters were in sight, but he did not have to wait long. Noise echoed. The sudden distant sound grabbed Chenjan's attention. What was happening? The bloodless battlefield was littered with dead elementals. Suddenly, the remains began to glow, reforming right before his eyes. The frozen fragments merged. A brand new icy creature started to take shape. A gorgeous icy maiden materialized right before him, bearing an incredibly cold stare. The Snow Queen, Chenjan instantly recognized the terrifying hidden boss. Her element was ice, a hidden boss, and she was incredibly powerful. Seriously, how does Chenjan always manage to stumble into these rare hidden bosses? She was a highly upgraded, near-indestructible version of an ice golem. Formidable, he knew this would be another brutal struggle. The battle would be tough. The young man felt completely exhausted. Could he endure? He was not sure he could survive another clash. His willpower remained strong, but his health bar was dangerously low. The continuous fighting had taken a massive toll on the young warrior. Checking his stats, he realized it was time to use his class skill. He activated his basic healing skill to quickly restore his condition. Power returned. Chen Jian could feel his wounds rapidly patching up. Standing inside the soothing healing cloud, he slowly caught his breath. Healing complete, he steeled himself for what might be his end. This was it. He would find out if this battle was his last. Staring at the Snow Queen, he warned her he had survived worse. Kill me, he dared her to try if she had the strength. He analyzed her. The queen was just an advanced type of elemental. This meant his petrification skill should theoretically work on her too. No hesitation, Chen Jian immediately rushed forward to launch an attack. He closed in fast, aiming to shatter her defenses right away. He hoped she would turn into stone, just like the others. But his first strike landed, and things went completely sideways. He was wrong. Chen Jian had severely underestimated the queen's power. His heavy blade barely managed to scratch her ice-gold armor. No petrification and no damage. Talk about a total nightmare scenario. With skills failing, he had to rely on standard sword strikes instead. Suddenly, the Snow Queen went on the counteroffensive and raised her hand. An icy sword materialized in her hand, which she raised high above her. Looking at her charging up, it is immediately clear her next attack is going to be absolutely devastating. Chen Jian knows if she keeps spamming these ultimate moves from the start, he has zero chance of survival. Right on cue, a massive swarm of razor-sharp ice shards rains down from the heavens, ready to obliterate everything in sight. Chen Jian barely manages to throw himself out of danger at the absolute last second as colossal frozen boulders crash into the earth below with absolutely terrifying, bone-shattering force. Instantly turning solid stone into fine powder, the young man sprints away like crazy. Dodging because the whole battlefield is covered in falling spikes, tanking this is completely out of the question. His only option is to run. Miraculously, Chen Jian weaves through the lethal frozen barrage, knowing a single slip-up means getting shredded into mincemeat. But he cannot just play defense forever. He has to wait for a tiny, perfect opening. Right as her rhythm breaks, Chen Jian spots his narrow window of opportunity. He watches the next wave of massive frozen blocks hanging high up in the air, and realizes this is his shot. Instantly, the young warrior charges straight at the Snow Queen, using the giant boss's own massive body as a biological shield. Safe from the falling ice overhead, the young warrior finally has the perfect opportunity to strike her directly. Sure enough, his rapid strikes do more than just disrupt her current spell, ruining her entire attack flow. Chen Jian realizes that if he just keeps spamming basic strikes, he can successfully prevent her from ever using those devastating ultimate moves. His job now is simple: dodge her single attacks and land his own precise counterattacks. He knows this strategy is his ticket to victory. If he keeps this up, he can actually bring down the Snow Queen. It is not going to be easy, but a fighting chance is all he needs. Can he actually pull this off? To find out, the brave young warrior decides to test the strength of his rapid combo strikes. Can basic combos actually overpower her ultimate spells? Chen Jian steels himself and starts laying down combos, counting each hit in his mind. He wants to see exactly how many strikes it takes to break her, but the boss is not making this easy, parrying his onslaught with icy precision. As more time passes, the combo counter in his head is rapidly climbing all the way towards 400, then 900, yet the relentless Snow Queen still holds her ground, absorbing the pressure and firing back with dangerous counterblows. Suddenly, the counter surpasses 9,000 consecutive hits, but the grueling battle drags on with neither side giving up. At this point, he has completely transformed into a mindless, relentless slashing machine. His 10,000th swing feels like his absolute last, and Chen Jian is running completely on fumes. His fingers frozen to the blade, as if it were a physical extension of himself. Then a glorious system notification flashes right in front of his eyes: 10,000 combos achieved. Because of this insane feat, he unlocks a brand new fatal attack ability. Talk about perfect timing. Chen Jian knows this is his ultimate do-or-die moment. Armed with this fresh, incredibly lethal power, the exhausted warrior is finally ready to test her limits. Just how much punishment the formidable Snow Queen can actually take. This ultimate strike completely ignores her ice defenses. He can only pray this single blow is enough to shatter her forever. Drawing in his final breath, Chen Jian activates the ultimate fatal strike, fully aware that only one of them is ever going to walk out of this frozen chamber alive. It is either him or the absolute terror of this dungeon, the Snow Queen. He shattered her defense, lunging with his sword and pouring all his strength and hope for victory. Suddenly, the miracle he needed actually happened. His attack sliced right through her arm, splitting it in two before his eyes. Furious, the Snow Queen stared in pure, icy rage at her severed hand. It fell to the ground. Chenjin smirked, thrilled his attack actually worked. He looked at the boss smugly, asking if she was feeling all right without it. Did she miss her limb? Naturally, a missing arm was a terrible look. So she immediately used her magic to regenerate the severed limb on the spot. Within moments, a brand new hand grew back. She looked perfectly fine. It was like nothing had even happened to her arm in the first place. This insanely fast healing completely stunned the young man. He realized that even if he could wound her, victory was still a long way off. The Snow Queen stood there, as gorgeous, powerful, and terrifying as ever. Staring down at him, she treated him like a completely insignificant bug. Gliding forward, she lunged at our main character with another deadly strike. Chenjin barely dodged the attack, his heart hammering in his chest. The tougher this fight got, the angrier he became, refusing to back down. He declared that he would finish her off with one final blow. She attacked again. He barely survived the sheer force of her impact. It was painfully clear his chances of surviving this were dropping fast. She was a hidden boss for a reason, growing stronger by the second. Raising both of her hands, she gripped her massive icy sword with fury. Chenjin had zero time to react, barely slipping away from her devastating swing. There was no room for hesitation now. He had to make a move. With his energy rapidly fading, everything rode on timing his next move. One final perfect strike was his only ticket out of this frozen hell. Spreading her razor-sharp icy wings, she closed in to finish him off. He gathered his absolute last ounce of strength to launch a desperate counterattack. But his effort felt completely useless against her overwhelming, freezing defense. You can practically feel her confidence as she waited for him to collapse. Chenjin knew he could not let her unleash her ultimate special ability. If she managed to trigger it, his run would be completely over. He rushed forward, trying to get close enough for one clean, lethal strike. But the queen unleashed her wrath, sending a massive wave of ice his way. Sharp, deadly icicles rained down from above, aiming straight for his chest. Somehow, our boy managed to weave through the frozen storm. He closed the distance and slashed at her, both of them moving like a whirlwind. They danced around each other like moths drawn to a deadly flame. Luckily, Chenjin realized this clash had actually ended in his favor. He did not even have the energy to celebrate his hard-earned victory. The beginner trial was officially cleared, and a system screen popped up. He got his clear rewards for taking down the terrifying Snow Queen. He scored a water essence, a freezing shard of ice meant for weapon fusion. Fusing this shard into a sword would grant it a highly unique ability. This skill was called Ice Therapy, healing him with every single attack. His health would slowly regenerate, though only by a tiny fraction, on one hand. Almost pointless, but some recovery was still better than absolutely nothing. With time, this skill could grow. For now, though, Shenzhen was exhausted. Completely spent after hours of clearing the dungeon, he knew it was time. He decided it was time to leave, pulling his hood back up as he stepped through the portal, leaving the beginner area behind, and noticed. A massive crowd was gathered, and some stared at Shenzhen in surprise. They could not understand how he walked out without a single scratch on him. Shenzhen noticed their strange stares and immediately sensed trouble was brewing. Nearby, several prominent figures, likely official members of the Hunter League, were busy taking down urgent statements from a severely injured young player. A short distance away, another bandaged survivor was receiving medical attention. Uniformed medical personnel and guards were standing closely beside him. Shenzhen had absolutely no idea what had happened inside this place. The dungeon difficulty was incredibly low. Why were people so badly hurt? At that moment, a desperate cry for help rang out from the portal. Something was clearly wrong, and Shenzhen wanted to find out what. And get this right then, a bleeding young man literally crawled out of the gate, drenched in blood and completely unable to stand. This sight deeply alarmed Shenzhen. He tried to comprehend how anyone could sustain such life-threatening injuries in a zone meant for beginners. Scanning the area, he spotted a young girl wrapped in a blanket. Though bandaged by medics, her eyes remained hollow and completely lost. Shenzhen approached, apologized for the intrusion, and asked what happened. The girl was completely shocked that he did not know yet. but she began to explain the bizarre nightmare that had unfolded. Shenzhen wanted to hear every single detail of what had happened. So she began to describe the horrific events. Just a few hours earlier, she and her team entered the beginner dungeon to practice their brand new abilities, which they had only recently acquired. They needed to test their combat skills and hone their coordination. At first, everything went exactly as usual during their training session. But suddenly, a thick cloud of black smoke materialized above the ground. Sensing immediate danger, they suspected something was wrong and retreated. However, events unfolded far too rapidly, and they had no time. There was no escape as thick black smoke swallowed everything around them. When the dark mist finally cleared, the weak dungeon monsters had suddenly transformed into terrifying, mutated, and incredibly powerful versions. Their strength far surpassed the players, leaving them completely outmatched. The young players realized they stood no chance and desperately ran. During their flight, the girl suffered a severe waist wound and collapsed. She lay helpless on the floor, unable to do absolutely anything. Fortunately, a few of them were forcefully returned after exceeding the time. Otherwise, they would have died inside. It turned out that all this happened right when Shenzhen entered, leaving him wondering if he caused it. His very presence might have altered things. He worried his sudden appearance had triggered some hidden mechanism inside the dungeon, making him stay highly alert. Chen Zhan quickly thanked the injured girl for sharing her story and wished her a fast recovery, realizing he could no longer slip inside into the dungeon whenever he pleased. Just then, a large group of players marched forward, sent directly by the guild to take control of the situation. It was the largest guild in the city, led by the infamous Huang Tu. Nearly their entire force strode confidently straight toward the portal. Their numbers seemed completely excessive for this raid, especially if Chen Zhan was right about the dungeon returning to its normal, peaceful state. The incoming squad immediately ordered their healers to help the wounded. At the same time, the main strike team received orders to prepare for immediate deployment into the portal. Chen Zhan watched quietly from the sidelines, knowing his assistance would not be needed here. Slipping away from the crowd, he kept a low profile and scanned the area, knowing he had to vanish before anyone spotted him. But just as he turned, the girl from before suddenly called out to him, acting thrilled to run into an old acquaintance out here. She asked what he was doing alone and offered to check his injuries. But before Chen Zhan could even reply, she scoffed loudly. She smugly assumed that no team wanted to recruit a loser like him. Pitying him mockingly, she waited for a response, but Chen Zhan stayed completely silent. Her pity quickly turned to annoyance as she felt ignored by a nobody. When Chen Zhan turned to leave, she mocked him for running away. She sneered about him running to his nanny, knowing full well she was dead. Her cruel laughter echoed, but Chen Zhan went completely cold. Without a single word, he drew his blade and spun around. Pressing the cold steel directly against her throat, he demanded she apologize. If she refused, he would end her life right on the spot. Terror washed over her as she stared at the blade touching her skin. She knew him only as a weak healer and could not comprehend his speed. Suddenly, a second weapon clashed against his, stopping a fatal blow. An authoritative voice cut in, demanding everyone lower their weapons. Killing other players was strictly outlawed within the novice zone. It was forbidden. The man who stepped in was Huang Tu, the powerful guild leader himself. He warned that anyone defying his authority would pay with their lives. He sheathed his weapon, leaving Chen Zhan to silently observe him. Recognizing the distinctive one-eyed warrior, Chen Zhan knew exactly who he was. Huang Tu managed the guild with the legendary status of a diamond tier hunter. Picking a fight with someone of that caliber was a terrible idea. Chen Zhan calmly stated he understood and hoped their paths would not cross. But Huang Tu stopped him, noting that rules only applied inside the city. Out in the wild, player killing was completely fair game. Hearing this, the arrogant girl chimed in to back up his words. Loud in the arena, she was furious that a simple healer had actually managed to rattle her. Scare her, so she started provoking Chen, openly challenging him to a duel, but her red-haired ally tried to pull her back, calling the whole thing a complete waste of time. Worth doing, Chen just shrugged off her insults, looking her dead in the eye. Saying that he was ready to face them whenever they wanted, Hungu was highly pleased. He was glad the boy did not run away. Seriously, why would he even think of running? Chen confirmed they would settle this right inside the arena itself. This was the one place where hunters could legally resolve grudges with their lives. Most came here to sharpen their skills. Now, there are only two ways this goes: a friendly timed spar or a match to the death. Only one walks out. Chen followed his new acquaintances toward the gates, keeping a close eye on them. Calling them friends was a stretch. Somehow, he had walked straight into another mess. Still, Chen looked around with genuine curiosity, taking in the violent atmosphere. He focused on an active spar happening right now. A young warrior was fighting hard. The guy wielded a heavy axe in one hand and a spear in the other, backed by a female mage. Chen paused to study their moves, but his opponents immediately got annoyed. They shoved him forward, snapping that he was just wasting everyone's time. The guild members assumed Chen was trembling with fear since he was a total rookie. That loud girl who started this whole mess kept snickering behind her hand. She mocked him, claiming his face made it obvious how terrified he really was. Humiliating him was her main goal, but Chen just stayed quiet and calm. He did not even bother responding to their childish teasing, letting the insults slide. No arguments, no explanations. Naturally, she took his silence as pure fear. She assumed he was terrified, suggesting that if Chen dropped to his knees right now and begged for mercy, maybe she would forgive him. She twirled a sharp dagger in her hand, asking if he liked her generous offer. No bow, she could not guarantee his safety in the ring. It was much safer to beg for forgiveness now, while he still had the chance. Avoid the pain while there is time, she warned, but Chen finally spoke up. He told her there was no need for that. He would fight her normally. The arena manager stepped up, warning them to register before stepping onto the field. They had to choose their match type. The girl immediately selected a friendly spar. She just wanted to teach this newcomer how to eat dirt properly. Her red-haired friend smirked, noting this free win would boost her record nicely. You cannot miss an easy opportunity like this. The manager turned to Chen. He asked if the young man had any objections to a friendly spar. Chen calmly shook his head and said he wanted to choose a death match. Wait for it, entering a death match required special permission from a hidden boss. Amazed this weakling wanted to end his life, she laughed in shock. He probably wants to join his teammates who died in the dungeon weeks ago. Besides, she was absolutely certain Chen did not even know what a permit was. But right then, the quiet young man reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small scroll and handed it directly to the stunned manager. This item was his official abyss permit, he explained calmly. The crowd fell silent as everyone realized the rookie was not bluffing. It was going to happen, but this fight was getting interesting since the guy held an abyss permit, and possessing it was enough to completely discourage his opponents. They had no idea how he got it, especially since the guy was only bronze rank, making it impossible for someone like Chen Jian to defeat a hidden boss. The crowd assumed that Chen Jian must have stolen the permit because there was absolutely no way he earned it himself, yet Chen Jian ignored his mocking opponents completely. He simply asked if they were finally ready to fight to the death. The arena manager stepped in and approved, stating that since the guy held a valid abyss permit, the opposing team had no right to decline. The girl instantly looked frustrated, remaining absolutely certain that Chen Jian could never defeat that hidden boss. He must have swiped the permit using some dirty trick. Other players in the arena started crowding around, having already heard the rumors of an upcoming death match. Everyone was hyped because a wild show like this was way too good to miss. Competitors even abandoned their own games and rushed over to watch. A massive crowd was quickly forming since they had never witnessed a real death match before, and it was the ultimate spectator sport. People whispered that this must be some intense blood feud or a bitter disagreement over split loot. On one side stood Chen Jian, a total rookie healer with 0 wins, losses, or draws to his name. This was his very first arena duel. His opponent, Lu Meilei, was an assassin with 16 victories. She smugly asked Chen Jian if he had seen her record, and if he was already regretting his choice. Lu Meilei promised she wouldn't tear him into tiny pieces. The watching crowd was completely stunned, thinking it was some kind of joke. A healer standing against a seasoned assassin was barely a fight. It seemed obvious that Chen Jian would be crushed instantly, making it barely worth the crowd's attention. Lu Meilei drew her sharp daggers, ready to begin. Finally, Chen Jian spoke up, telling her that all this endless pre-match trash talk was starting to get on his nerves. He was done listening to the chatter. Drawing his sword, he coldly told her to just make her move, before leaping. Forward, Lu Mei declared that the foolish healer was about to die. The crowd focused intently on Lu Mei, but one girl kept her eyes glued on Chen Jian. She quickly stepped back, pulled out her phone, and urgently dialed a number. As soon as the call connected, she quickly introduced herself to the person on the other end, asking to speak directly to the boss. Xiaoi didn't quite understand why they cared about a low-level bronze-ranked deathmatch. But her boss snapped, telling her to stop questioning him and just follow orders. Nodding, Xiaoi promised she would carry out the task without any further delay. Hanging up, she immediately set up her camera to start streaming the fight. Addressing her online viewers, Xiaoi announced she would be broadcasting the entire match live, while making sure to remind everyone to smash that like and subscribe button. The duel was set to begin, and the online viewers were already incredibly hyped. Both fighters took their stances with almost zero suspense. Lu Mei believed that her opponent simply lacked any common sense, which is why things had gotten so incredibly out of hand. She sneered, telling him he was about to. She wanted to show him what she was made of. Chen Jin was finally facing her. The assassin moves with blinding speed. Chen calmly watches her approach. Daggers grip tight. Lu Mei is furious that a healer would dare challenge her. To her, this is a complete disgrace. He stands absolutely no chance. She is about to teach him a lesson and end this right now. After all, a low-level weakling like him cannot even see her shadow. But Chen just laughs out loud. It drives Lu Mei completely insane. She thinks he is far too cocky, a mere pest in her eyes. Lu Mei boasts she was made for epic battlefields, not trash like him. She circles him like a wasp, far too fast to track. Finally, she decides to strike from behind, using her active backstab skill. She raises both daggers and plunges them down, but Chen stands still. With a couple of quick steps forward, he easily dodges her strike. The crowd goes wild. Many think it is just pure luck. Perhaps the assassin simply missed her mark, but Lu Mei knows better. She knows she did not miss. This is getting ridiculous. She cannot comprehend how a simple healer just dodged her. Chen smiles, telling her that her hyped-up speed is honestly pretty slow. Lu Mei quickly analyzes the situation. Something here is seriously wrong. The guy is only a bronze-ranked fighter. How is this possible? She warns him not to get cocky as she prepares to strike again. Even if he dodged once, she believes he is still far weaker. She decides to crush him now, without using her special abilities. Charging forward, she yells that the gap in their ranks is absolute. She swings her daggers with lethal force, but right before they connect, Chen casually catches her razor-sharp blade barehanded, stopping her completely. This should be impossible. Lu Mei realizes he is hiding his real power. The crowd leans in, realizing this healer is holding a massive secret. He is completely confident, and Lu Mei realizes she cannot hold back anymore. She stops holding back and prepares to unleash her most dangerous skill. To destroy him, she activates her legendary innate skill, Mist of Deception. She admits he is surprisingly strong, but claims he cannot survive this. Instantly, Chen is completely swallowed by a thick, blood-red fog. He reaches his hand out, feeling the crimson mist cling like heavy water. Slicing his sword through the air, Chen tells her this legendary skill is pitiful. With a calm smile, Chen activates his own petrification skill. He slices through the blood-red mist, shattering her illusion instantly. The spectators are totally baffled by why he is just swinging wildly. Some think he has lost his mind out of pure desperation. After all, how could a simple healer counter such legendary magic? They watch in awe as the assassin's mist completely engulfs the arena, while Chen just swings his sword like he is swatting flies. But then, a sharp-eyed spectator screams for everyone to look closer. Look closely because that legendary fog is actually starting to fade. The crowd watches in absolute disbelief as Chen's bizarre strategy actually works. It seems like an impossible joke, but the deadly mist completely vanishes. The fog dissolved and jagged stone shards rained down onto the arena floor. Lu Mei was terrified, furious. This was impossible. Her innate skill was completely nullified. Lu Mei watched him, narrowing her eyes. She crept closer, using the fading mist to slip behind his back and sink her dagger deep. But at the absolute last second, Chen Jin spun around and slashed her. He coldly muttered that her arrogance would cost her everything. As dark blood sprayed from her neck, she collapsed onto the cold stone floor. Her dagger slipping from her limp hand, the crowd went dead silent. Nobody saw this coming. Then again, they came to see a death match. They should have known how brutal this would end. Meanwhile, Zayoi stood frozen, keeping her camera locked on the action. She never had such incredible content before. Chenjin walked over and pressed his blade directly against her throat, asking if she was done talking trash. Lumi stared up at him, her mind completely blank with disbelief. How could a mere bronze-ranked player overpower her like this, even as she choked on her own blood on the floor? Lumi desperately wanted to know how he did this to her. Chenjin simply muttered that he was just minding his own business, and she should not have crossed him. She gasped for air, agonizing over the agonizing truth. The cold, hard fact remained. Just then, Chenjin received a system alert, a new weapon form called Bloodbath Weapons Mastery active. Now he could use two swords or use a dagger. Talk about irony, he had to execute a killer. To unlock this deadly power, the Hangshu Guild members who came to support to cheer Lumi on realized they massively underestimated this kid. Now, they had absolutely no idea how they would explain this failure to their leader. Zayoi kept broadcasting, shouting to her viewers that right before their eyes, this bronze hunter shattered a silver assassin's illusion and took her down. Seriously, let that sink in. This guy is actually just a support healer. Zayoi's stream was now broadcasting on giant screens all over the city, showing a brutal match where an ordinary bronze rank healer completely dominated a silver rank assassin. Street crowds gathered, glued to the screen. Nobody could comprehend how a support class could defeat a silver rank assassin. He was literally just a healer. The bloodthirsty arena went wild. They screamed for Chenjin to finish her off, but Chenjin stood silent, weighing his options carefully. He did not want pointless bloodshed. Looking down at Lumi, he told her that her life belonged to him now, so she had better start begging. Instantly, she dropped to her knees, crying out for Chenjin to forgive her. She sobbed out apologies for insulting his friends, desperately pleading for him to spare her life. Chenjin coldly pointed out that if Lumi won, she would have killed him instantly. He was literally just walking by. Was it really that difficult to leave him in peace? All this blood spilled over her petty, childish insults. He demanded she call herself a shameless coward, or else choose a swift death right then and there. Meanwhile, the live viewers were left thrilled and completely shocked. Lumi agreed, understanding everything that was expected of her. Right then, one of her teammates couldn't stand the humiliation and bolted. He stood up, ready to storm out of the arena. Every single member of the Hyuntu Guild knew exactly how pissed their leader would be once he caught wind of this massive disgrace. Meanwhile, across the country, every single smartphone lit up. Liu Mei was on every screen, admitting to the public what a fraud she was. She did not just call herself a fake, she called herself a shameless liar. Now everyone saw the genius of Shioi starting that stream. Their viewer count completely shattered the guild record, but that was just the beginning. The real question was what this bronze-ranked rookie was actually trying to achieve by challenging a silver-ranked player. Shioi speculated that maybe Chen Jan had his eyes set on the very top of the player leaderboards. It actually made perfect sense. Maybe this guy would be the spark to rebuild a whole new guild. Outside the arena, Chen Jan got instantly swarmed by screaming fans. They called him a total genius, begged to add him, and were dying to know how a simple healer managed to break through that illusion fog. But Chen Jan knew the Hyuntu Guild would eventually come looking for blood to avenge this massive humiliation. That payback was coming the second the hype died down. He had to do whatever it took to get stronger before that day arrived. But regardless of the looming danger, right now, he felt absolutely amazing. No regrets about his class choice, but get this, back at the guild headquarters, nobody was sleeping. Down in the cells, Liu Mei was currently getting brutally, savagely beaten. Her clothes were ripped to shreds, her skin covered in deep, bleeding gashes. She was bound tightly in handcuffs, forced to pay the price for bringing such utter disgrace to the name, and the one administering the pain. None other than Boss Wong himself, striking her repeatedly with a heavy leather whip. He was furious they disgraced the guild and still dared to show their faces. He could not comprehend how some trash bronze healer completely crushed his silver star. The whip cracked hard against Liu Mei's face with brutal, unforgiving force. She did not even try to hold it in, screaming out in pure agony. As blood splattered across the floor, Boss Wong just kept swinging, mocking her. He growled that he was treating her like the absolute trash she called herself. Every member needed to learn that their lives meant nothing compared to guild reputation. Next to the boss sat a massive, terrifying beast of a dog, just waiting for the command to tear the bleeding girl limb from limb. It was a ruthless, massive warhound. Watching this, the red-haired guy knew things were incredibly bad. The boss had completely lost his mind and would actually kill the unconscious Liu Mei. You cannot treat your own people like animals. Suddenly, a bright blue flash erupted. Right next to him, in an instant, an agonizing, paralyzing pain surged through his body. The young man's arm was completely ripped off, sending a fountain of blood spraying everywhere. He stared in sheer terror, his mind unable to process the sudden horror. As he collapsed, screaming and desperately trying to hold the bloody stump, Boss Wang immediately dropped to his knees, bowing deeply to a mysterious stranger. Trembling, the boss begged for forgiveness, addressing the newcomer as Mr. Merchant. He stammered that he was honored to serve him and would gladly help with anything. He quickly blamed his subordinates, claiming they simply did not understand the situation. Wanu bows low, desperately apologizing now to the mysterious merchant. Rising calmly from his chair, the red-suited man demands to buy the girl. The very girl who had failed and disappointed her boss, this dealer possessed. A truly striking look, sporting long red hair, a crimson suit, and round glasses resting on his nose, Wanu quickly hands the troublemaker Liu Mei over. Byron can do whatever he wants with her, he slowly strokes her face, promising that payment will arrive within a few days. Suddenly he announces his departure, vanishing completely out of thin air. Just as he had appeared out of nowhere, in that inexplicable fashion. The merchant vanished. The young man, now missing his arm, begged Wanu for some urgent medical help, but the boss was completely clueless. He had no idea why Byron needed Liu Mei. Still, Wanu ordered his men to rush her to the hospital to treat her wounds immediately. This merchant, Byron, was an underground dealer working across different guilds. Nobody knew his actual boss. He would materialize out of thin air, offering strange deals that were completely terrible, yet impossible to decline. One group once dared to reject him. Because of that choice, their entire faction was utterly destroyed. Every time, the merchant departed while leaving his info and payment behind, offering items or services instead of cash. Wanu spent the whole night reflecting on what had occurred. This trade was not a total disaster, but he had lost 2 active members. It was all because of that mysterious, low-tier bronze rank healer who needed to be eliminated. Meanwhile, across the city, the mysterious merchant materializes in an alley, carrying the battered, unconscious body of Liu Mei. Byron gently drops her down and retrieves a legendary magic stone from his pocket. This transformation stone is legendary grade. Immediately, he activates the item. Beside him, Liu Mei lies completely still, hovering right on the edge of death. As the magic fades, the merchant breaks into a wide, ecstatic grin. Looking closely at the stone, it seemed to have absorbed all her essence. He had drained every bit of life from his victim. Meanwhile, Chenjin returns to his cramped apartment, finally washing away the dirt and blood. Staring into the mirror, he fully understands he is no longer weak. For years, others had treated him like garbage because of his low rank. Chenjin used to take the abuse, thinking it was his unavoidable fate. But from today on, those days of constant disrespect are officially over. Remembering the parting words of his fallen friend, live and grow stronger. Now Chenjin feels absolutely certain that nobody will ever call him weak. With a new haircut, his appearance changes completely, but sudden pain strikes him. An intense, overwhelming weakness floods his entire body, causing him to stagger. He barely staggers onto the couch, realizing these are actually severe side effects. His face turns a sickly green, feeling as if his insides are twisting. His entire body feels turned inside out when a glowing stone appears. Right in midair, seemingly from nowhere. Meanwhile, just outside his building, standing beneath a large umbrella, is Byron, wearing his bright red suit. 2 days later, a crowd of hunters gathers inside the main association hall. Chenjin kept thinking about how awful he was at healing. Most people naturally awaken their innate abilities, but his power had never activated, since a natural awakening was unlikely to happen on its own. Players had to rely on awakening stones. Currently, some hunters were standing in front of a board looking at the prices. The cost for stones that unlocked rare, interesting abilities was incredibly high. Chenjin knew he would have to venture into the troll mine, but to do that, he needed to join a solid group just to obtain those awakening stones. if he entered the dungeon, the system would alter his configuration, taking other people with him. Would be sending them to certain brutal death. Chenjin realized that the situation around him was starting to get pretty awkward, and he really needed to find a way to escape. Just then, a voice called out his name. A girl approached him and happily said she was glad to meet him. She warmly invited him to join her party and head straight into the troll mine. This was Tang Xiaoi, the very girl who had been live-streaming his battles in the arena. Xiaoi was shocked that the guy actually knew her name, asking where he got that info. Chenjin honestly admitted he wished he did not know her, but he was now an internet star thanks to her stream, so it was impossible to ignore who she was. Xiaoi thought this was amazing, since she had been streaming for years. But her videos had never gotten this kind of attention. Just then, other hunters in the association building recognized Chenjin. Everyone started whispering. After all, this was Chenjin, the bronze rank healer who had challenged a silver rank powerhouse. Several people immediately approached him, asking to take a photo. He was basically a celebrity now, and those girls instantly noticed his stylish new haircut. Plus, everyone was curious about the exact nature of his relationship with Xiaoi, this massive fame. Chenjin wanted to escape this sudden crowd of fans as fast as humanly possible. He grabbed Xiaoi by the hand, dragging her away without any explanation. Chenjin pulled her straight into the restroom and explained that he had been desperately trying to stay under the radar, but now his cover was blown. He was in serious danger. The powerful Hang Tu Guild had been disgraced, and they would likely hunt Chenjin down. Xiaoi realized she was fully to blame for this and felt deeply guilty. Chenjin turned to leave, but the persistent Xiaoi begged him one more time to join her party. The young man stared closely at her, asking if she truly knew what lay ahead and what kind of dark future awaited them. From there, Chenjin laid out few strict conditions. He demanded every single awakening stone that dropped to go directly to him, claiming he did not care about other loot. Xiaoi realized that the guy still had not awakened his power, meaning he really was stuck at bronze rank. His second condition was a flat-out demand that they go into the dungeon alone, completely refusing to bring anyone else along with them. Xiaoi could not comprehend his logic. These high-level dungeons were usually designed for groups of 5. Was he actually trying to get them both killed? Chenjin calmly replied that those were his only conditions, and she had to accept. If she did not like it, they could just forget about teaming up. Xiaoi thought this was absolute nonsense. If the guild leader had not insisted on uncovering everything about this mysterious player, she would have abandoned this arrogant jerk long ago. Instead, she found herself chasing him down, yelling that she was ready to accept every single condition. Once all the details were locked in, the two of them headed straight for the troll mine. This dungeon had existed for an incredibly long time, and they reached it in no time. Standing before the portal, Xiaoi felt a surge of excitement. She was eager to get started and suggested gearing up and heading inside immediately, but Chen said he did not own any armor at all. He only carried his trusty weapon. Xiaoi was stunned once more. Not only were they heading in as a duo, but he did not even have basic defensive gear. It felt like a straight-up suicide mission. Chen did not get why she was stressing. Death was a risk in any fight, after all. Besides, he was not forcing Xiaoi to follow him. She originally thought they were just negotiating over some awakening stones, but this crazy guy was ready to die. In response, he simply told her it was entirely his own concern. He even made it clear that she did not have to fight, just keep herself safe. As they stepped into the portal, Chen gave a warning. If she got too terrified, she was free to leave and not worry about him. Xiaoi realized she was dealing with a genuine madman, but if she told the guild leader about this or backed out, her entire career would be in trouble. Xiaoi knew that failing this crucial mission and disappointing her boss meant going straight back to hosting those mind-numbing live streams. Suddenly, the girl realized her partner had already crossed over without a single word. He went in without her, completely ignoring her. It was incredibly insulting, honestly. Xiaoi was a gold-rank summoner. Still, she had to stay calm and focus on the mission. She assured herself that everything would be fine, and if she hated it, she would simply bail. Entering the dark mine, she muttered that Chen would never find the dungeon boss on his own, but looking around, Xiaoi froze in absolute shock at the unbelievable scene before her. Finally, she understood why her boss wanted every detail on this guy. This was unreal. Chen had plowed through the dungeon entirely alone. The stone floor was covered in the corpses of defeated goblins, with magic stones scattered everywhere. Meanwhile, Chen kept slicing through the monsters like a hot knife through butter. Keeping his blade moving, Xiaoi finally relaxed. The run actually looked pretty comfortable and surprisingly fun. Standing right in the middle of a magic circle, she summoned her beast to appear. They had to show Chen exactly what they were truly capable of. Now, alongside her summoned ally, she would prove they were not to be taken lightly. Pained screams of dying monsters echoed all around. Chen noted that thanks to his recent level up, these silver rank monsters were no longer a threat. To him, he was relieved that the system evolution mode had not triggered, this time ensuring a smooth run. Suddenly, Xiaoi told her partner that they should jump into the fray together, but Chen replied that there was no need to bother. Every single monster in the area was already completely wiped out. The flustered girl mentioned running into a massive pile of corpses along the way. She was almost ready to admit that Chen Zhen could clear this dungeon alone. Still, she felt sure that Chen Zhen would struggle with the final boss. But Chen Zhen just smiled, saying they would never know unless he gave it a shot. As they continued deeper, the pair eventually came across two massive elite monsters. This meant the boss room was likely right behind the guarded gates. Even though the earlier goblins were weak, these gatekeepers were a different story. Chen Zhen figured the boss was waiting just past these high-level guards. He turned to Xiaoi and told her to get ready for action. If she was ready, he was going to leave these two guards entirely to her. After all, he wanted to see how Xiaoi dealt with actual threats. Unfazed, Xiaoi told the young man to stop looking down on her skills. She pointed her staff forward, ordering Darky to strike the beasts. She wanted to prove their power to this smug know-it-all. Darky, a massive demonic hound, immediately lunged forward into battle. Xiaoi commanded him to rip the enemies to shreds with a frontal assault. Leaping into the air, the beast transformed instantly into a massive werewolf. He crashed down next to the elite monster, slashing with razor-sharp claws. To make things even more devastating, Xiaoi activated a power boost. The wolf now looked absolutely terrifying, his claws growing longer and sharper than ever. Just one ferocious swipe shattered the enemy shield and tore the monster apart. With the target eliminated, Darky stood tall on his hind legs and growled. But get this, Chen Zhen was already looking pretty bored by it all. For him, this fight was dragging on way too slow, and he hated waiting. He was in a massive rush, and these slow-paced battles were testing his patience. If they kept lagging behind, he would have to step in and end it. Chen Zhen kept complaining about the speed, completely unimpressed by the fight. To him, Xiaoi was treating this deadly dungeon like some amusement park. But when she finally looked over, she noticed the second guard was already dead. How could a simple bronze-ranked adventurer move faster than her own summon? Chen Zhen shrugged and confirmed he was indeed still bronze, even though he was level 37, which easily rivaled gold rank status. He just had not bothered to get his official promotion yet, leaving Xiaoi stunned. She could not wrap her head around someone turning down a rank promotion. But Chen Zhen did not care, saying that titles did not matter at all. He was just glad to see that she could hold her own in battle. And that was crucial because they were about to face the ultimate boss. Standing before the massive boss chamber, he warned her to think carefully. Once they crossed this threshold, there was absolutely no turning back. This warning only irritated Xiaoi, who had conquered countless dungeons before. Plus, her companion beast was far stronger than he realized. Darky was a highly powerful magical wolf, capable of shredding any opponent. Chen Zhen listened to her boast with a calm, amused expression. He smiled, stepped forward, and pushed open the massive doors to the boss room. Together, the two adventurers stepped inside to face whatever was waiting. Chen Zhen just hoped this wrap-up would be quick so he could leave. Escaping those annoying sounds as fast as possible, Sha called him to follow. She wanted to prove to that arrogant guy just how powerful they were together. Stepping into the main hall, they were instantly blinded by a flashing white light. This boded trouble. Quick system alerts warned that evolution mode was now active. As the boss began generating, Chen realized his theories were absolutely correct. Everything was happening exactly as he predicted. Moments later, the process finished. A colossal beast towered right in front of them, looking unbelievably massive. This high-ranking troll possessed terrifying strength and roared with primal fury. Sha froze in complete shock, knowing a boss this powerful was impossible here. A monster this deadly should not be here. The giant beast clutched a massive, spiked mace boasting overwhelming power and looking completely invulnerable. Chen quickly stated that none of that mattered now, since they had stepped inside, their only option was to kill the boss. Looking at its build, the monster clearly focused entirely on brute strength. That meant it had to be slow, but the beast had other plans. It let out a deafening roar and swung its weapon. Chen warned everyone about his bad feeling. This fight was not going to be easy. Sha grew worried, seeing Chen stand perfectly still without even drawing a weapon. Meanwhile, the massive troll swung its heavy mace in rapid succession. Debris exploded everywhere from the sheer wind pressure, but the young man never budged. Sha lost her patience and ordered her pet to strike. The giant wolf tensed its muscles, gearing up for a brutal attack. Unleashing a fierce howl, the werewolf charged forward at maximum speed. It leapt high into the air, flying straight toward the massive monster. The troll raised its weapon to strike, but the werewolf reacted quickly. Dashing forward, the wolf managed to land a clean scratch on the giant. The beast swung wildly to counter, but the agile summon easily evaded. Even when the giant raised its club again to slam the ground, the werewolf easily slipped away unscathed. Then it went on the offensive. Ripping into the giant with razor claws, it tore the troll apart. Flesh flew everywhere as the summon completely dominated the battlefield, leaving Sha thrilled as she cheered her pet on with absolute excitement. The boss looked terrifying at first, but this was surprisingly simple. Soon the werewolf stood victorious, brushing off its claws. Sha was delighted. She smiled happily, thinking her powerful pet had secured an effortless victory. Chen remained completely calm. She was being way too naive here. Right on cue, the defeated dungeon boss began to stir once more. Its severed limbs pulled back together, reforming its body instantly. It was completely healed, standing stronger and far more ferocious than before. Sha panicked, unable to comprehend how it survived after being shredded. Chen calmly noted that the real boss fight was finally starting. The giant creature grew so massive that its scale was hard to grasp. It rose like a towering mountain, completely overshadowing the two players. Sha stared up in utter disbelief, completely lost for words. Her eyes remained glued to the terrifying nightmare standing before them. Chen promised to explain everything to her later, but there was simply no time. They had to strike immediately, especially since the boss was entering its second phase. Xiaoyi needed to focus entirely on defending herself, staying back unless she found an opening. She stood there completely speechless. Her eyes went wide with absolute shock and disbelief. She stared at the young hunter, fully convinced he was jumping straight to his death. Right then, Chen closed the distance, darting straight toward the massive beast. He leaped high, aiming a heavy strike straight for its head. A few of his attacks connected, but they barely even scratched the armored monster. 0 damage. Chen quickly realized his normal sword attacks were totally useless. He had to switch tactics immediately. It was like fighting a walking brick wall. The monster shielded itself easily, completely unfazed by any of his incoming attacks. Xiaoyi watched him closely. He actually looked like he anticipated this massive power-up. It seemed like he had foreseen every single move. Just how many dark secrets was this mysterious young man keeping from her? But looking at his gear, Chen was definitely still just a bronze-rank hunter. He did not even know swords were useless against armored raid bosses. Xiaoyi yelled out a quick warning. Only assassins and mages could break that armor. With his current weak stats, Chen stood absolutely 0 chance of winning this fight. But suddenly, her pet completely ignored her direct commands. The werewolf charged forward, lunging at the beast. It aimed for the exposed underbelly, but the desperate strike completely failed. The boss swung its heavy spiked club, sending the poor beast flying backward. It crashed violently into the dungeon wall, landing hard on the cold stone. Blood pooled around its limp body, and it lay there completely motionless. There were no signs of life left. Seeing its victory, the boss roared. The easy kill only fueled its bloodlust, making the monster twice as aggressive. It raised its massive spiked club high, preparing to crush its next targets. The deadly weapon came crashing down toward them at a terrifying speed. Chen immediately stepped in front of Xiaoyi, shielding her with his own body. Watching the weapon fall, she closed her eyes, fully expecting to die. But Chen remembered her warning. Only an assassin or mage could win. This was the exact moment he had to play his hidden trump card. He recalled the strange glowing stone that had mysteriously appeared on his desk. It was completely unidentified, but he had fused it into his evolving weapon. And trust me, this single gamble is about to pay off big time. Now, with their lives on the line, he activated the stone's power. There was no time to worry about side effects. It was do or die. A system notification flashed, confirming the activation of his new assassin form. The evolving sword split into two razor-sharp blades. This new assassin form gave him unmatched lethal skills and critical damage. Xiaoi stared in pure shock at his glowing weapons. Chen's twin blades began to glow with a dark, threatening red aura. He was no longer wielding a simple blade, he held dual weapons now. He was no longer just a healer, he was a dual-class hybrid. Chen glanced back at her with a calm smile, asking if she was ready. Xiaoi was completely overwhelmed, lightheaded from a mix of sheer terror and pure shock. She had no idea how a healer could suddenly pull out a second class. But right now, that did not matter. They had to survive this boss first. And the monster was already launching a brutal assault, targeting Chen Zhan directly. It brought its massive, heavy hand crashing down, but the giant fist missed. The blow slammed into the stone floor, giving Chen Zhan the perfect opening to leap. He soared high up, and Chen Zhan struck the beast repeatedly while in midair. But the giant had already activated a powerful barrier around his body. The shield absorbed everything, rendering Chen Zhan's strikes useless. Xiaoi recognized the skill. It was Tyrant, a legendary defensive power unique to high-tier dungeon bosses. Chen Zhan had zero time to react before the enemy moved again. An enormous hand swept down, snatching the young hunter up like a mere tennis ball. The boss slammed Chen Zhan down, pinning him flat against the hard floor. Then the giant monster turned its attention toward the defenseless girl. It raised a fist to crush Xiaoi like a nail into wood. With no way to escape, Xiaoi closed her eyes and accepted her fate. But a sudden memory flashed through Chen Zhan's mind, fight to the end. Against all odds, Chen Zhan forced his body up and lunged forward to protect her. He intercepted the lethal strike just in time, saving Xiaoi from death. Chen Zhan warned her that if she could not fight, she must run. She needed to find safety, but Xiaoi, having just survived, refused. She told him she would not run away or back down now. Chen Zhan realized he could not let her get hurt. This had to end. He had to finish it now. The two opponents stared each other down. Chen Zhan gripped his dual blades against the massive, towering dungeon boss. The young hunter stood perfectly still, radiating absolute calm and confidence. Believing the boy had given up, the giant swung its heavy leg. It aimed to crush Chen Zhan like a bug, but he easily dodged. The massive foot crashed down with immense power, shattering the stone floor completely. The heavy momentum of the missed strike sent the monster lurching forward. Chen Zhan seized the opening immediately, leaping straight toward the giant. He slashed the boss, who quickly covered his face to protect himself. But Chen Zhan aimed directly for the eyes, knowing this was his only shot. With a quick feint, he landed on the monster's head and drove his blades in. The devastating strike worked, slicing the dungeon boss head wide open. The critical blow dealt massive damage as Chen Zhan leaped back down. A system notification confirmed that the Troll Lord had been defeated. He earned a new passive skill called Precise Strikes for his victory. This new ability permanently boosts his critical hit rate during battle. As the thick dust settled, the ruined troll mine was finally revealed. Corpses and glowing mana stones littered the entire bloody battlefield. Xiaoi stared at the fallen boss, struggling to believe her own eyes. How could a mere healer dual class with gold rank power like that? She desperately wanted to know the secret behind his ridiculous strength. No healer should be capable of this, but Chen Zhan just stood there. He did not waste time answering his friend's questions, immediately claiming the awakening. Stone they had agreed would go to him, once he secured the awakening stone. Chen Zhan suddenly stopped. He forgot something, leaning in close toward the girl whose body was covered in painful wounds, performing a basic healing spell. Chen Zhan activated his recovery magic and soon announced that her pain was completely gone, but Xiaoi had not fully recovered. From the horror, the girl sincerely thanked Chen Zhan for his crucial help in saving her. Life then came a twist. He drew his blade for one final, dangerous question. Seemingly out of nowhere, Chen Zhan declared he wanted to ask Xiaoi something. After all, the young man acted naive and inexperienced, as if ignoring the rules of the game. Chen Zhan suddenly pressed his blade to her heart. At that moment, her loyal wolf was fully prepared to tear him to pieces. The young man mentioned hearing that magical wolves were indeed incredibly loyal beasts, prepared to protect their masters at any cost, and now he was convinced. Xiaoi had an amazing partner. Still, the girl immediately imagined the grim consequences if her wolf attacked Chen Zhan right now. Xiaoi turned to her beast and stopped him, warning that there was absolutely no reason to fight. They stood no chance. Xiaoi knew her desperate situation. Xiaoi understood her limits. Hearing this, Chen Zhan withdrew his weapon and put it away. Xiaoi had only witnessed him fight once in the arena, making him curious why she would follow a seemingly mediocre healer into this dangerous dungeon. Demanding to know her true goals, the girl began to explain her motives were actually quite straightforward. She belonged to the Clover Guild and needed to test if he was worthy of joining them. Chen Zhan had heard of the Clover Guild, knowing they were a strange group operating in media. Xiaoi clarified that was not entirely accurate. They simply utilized the entertainment sector to keep their guild running. To fully understand their current state, we must look back at the devastating siege campaign waged against them 2 years ago. Back then, the elite Clover Guild was proudly known as the absolute best in the city and region. Their legendary leader was a renowned elite hunter, always supported by many powerful allies, making them the absolute strongest in the entire association. But get this, a terrifying new boss spawned right inside their territory. It was a completely broken, monstrous plant beast whose massive power exceeded every expectation. Resistance was completely useless, leaving them utterly defeated. In the end, the Clover Guild members fled in pure terror as many elite hunters fell victim to the monstrous plant. Witnessing the rapid rise in casualties, their brave leader stepped directly onto the dangerous front lines to shield her people. Armed with her incredible strength as an elite, the leader soloed the boss, saving their entire organization from total ruin. She fought desperately, bravely, never giving up until she emerged victorious, yet only a single elite companion survived. Thus, the Clover Guild lost almost all members and ceased to exist in its original state, leading the Hunter Association to completely forget about their existence. Yet to keep the guild, their beloved former leader sacrificed herself for running. The remaining members had to resort to some unconventional methods, actions that ruined their reputation. Clover's current leader wants no part in this. Instead, she searches tirelessly for a brand new hunter can restore the guild to its former glory, someone with the potential of an alpha rank hunter. Securing an alpha is Clover's only shot at a comeback. Honestly, these alpha rank hunters are basically walking weapons of mass destruction. There are only 9 of them in existence, making the desperate search nearly impossible. It is like finding a needle in a haystack, but Clover's leader refuses to give up. She already spotted this young man's crazy potential during his recent arena duel. Now that Xiaoi has seen Chen Zhan face to face inside the dungeon, she fully understands. She completely backs the leader's choice, a mere bronze-ranked, clearing a gold-ranked dungeon solo and crushing a deadly boss cannot possibly be just an ordinary player. And even if Chen Zhan himself misses the alpha rank, he will definitely secure a royal tier spot. That is exactly why Xiaoi is determined to bring him into the guild right away. Just silently listens to her story and hands her the ticket that dropped from the boss. Xiaoi hesitates to accept it, since all the magic stones belong to Chen Zhan. But the young man has zero interest in the stone, asking her to leave him alone. He is flattered that the Clover Guild sees his worth, but immediately insists he is not the savior their guild is searching for. He is no alpha. Suddenly, tragic memories of his dead friends flash before Chen Zhan. Memories of his fallen friends haunt him, leaving Chen Zhan absolutely convinced that he brings only tragedy. But Xiaoi strongly disagrees. If he is truly cursed, then where does this absolutely insane power come from? Just days ago, everyone looked down on him as a weak outcast. Chen Zhan stares at the girl, her words cut deep, stabbing right at a painful truth that he cannot deny. He turns and walks away, coldly ending the conversation. Xiaoi tightly grips the magic stone, muttering to herself that this incredibly smug jerk will absolutely join the Clover Guild regardless. She yells after him, promising she will never let him slip away. Meanwhile, urgent reports reach Clover's leader that the troll mine has been completely cleared by duo, and one of them is the exact target they have been tracking. She immediately demands a name, and they confirm the identity. It is Chen Jan, according to their records, his sudden spike in. Activity spiked right after the novice trial, leading directly to that public arena battle against the Hangtu Guild before he completely wiped out the entire goblin camp. On his own, yet he remains registered as a bronze healer. In just a few days, he has cleared 11 different dungeons completely solo. Let's be real, that level of sheer drive is absolutely terrifying. He was once called trash, explaining this obsession. But seeing him push this hard brings back painful memories. The leader notes that Chen Jan could grow in a very unpredictable and highly dangerous way, meaning it is finally time to meet him face to face. She is positive that he is the awakened beast they need. With that, their car speeds off, while Chen Jan pauses to rest. Back at his apartment, he collapsed on the floor. He could not even reach his bed. 3 days, just 3 days, and his entire life had completely flipped upside down. He had been grinding nonstop, pushing his body to the absolute limit. Clearing dungeon after dungeon, raising his overall stats and refining his combat skills. His strength had increased dramatically, yet his level barely showed it. After fully clearing that dangerous troll mine, his level had only gone up by a single point. It seemed that progress was slowing down. The stronger he got, the harder it became. Luckily, Song Ran had still managed to secure a massive stack of valuable hunter points. With his current combat abilities, he should easily rank among the high gold tier. To prepare, he decided to spend the next few days resting and planning ahead. Plus, Songran still had no idea what unique innate ability he would unlock from his awakening stone. He had not even activated it yet. Usually these awakened powers match the specific combat class of the player. But Songran did not even know his class. It was incredibly annoying. He decided to stop wasting his energy on endless doubts and pointless guessing. It was time to activate the stone and see his new power immediately. He grabbed the glowing crystal and crushed it in his palm with all his might. Instantly, powerful waves of raw energy surged directly through his entire body. Everything around him was bathed in a brilliant green light. He opened his eyes. He discovered he possessed a healing spell. It consumed just a little mana. Once activated, it restored his health every second, keeping him in the fight. Plus, his resistance to negative status effects was boosted by his healing shield. But increased resistance is a far cry from actual total invulnerability. Staring at this pathetic, paltry amount of health regeneration, Song Ran sighed. In the end, he really had turned out to be a lousy, pathetic healer. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was late, and he certainly was not expecting anyone. Cautiously, the young hunter walked over and pulled the front door open. 2 formal men in neat black suits stood waiting on the threshold. They politely asked if they were speaking with the hunter named Song Ran. Song Ran confirmed his identity, then asked these mysterious late-night visitors who they were. Men introduced themselves as representatives sent from the Hunters Association. One of them flashed an official badge, introducing himself as Liu Sheang. As the leader of the regional investigation squad, he had a direct request. He wanted Song Ran to help them with an active, high-priority case. Song Ran was completely confused. Why would these strangers need his help? He told them he was willing to cooperate with the association, but wondering why they had to show up at his apartment in the dead of night. Liu Sheang smirked, telling him there was no point in playing dumb anymore. A tiny team of just 2 hunters had somehow cleared a massive troll mine. That was a highly suspicious anomaly, and they wanted answers. Song Ran quickly countered, if the association already knew everything, why show up at his door? Privately, he worried they might suspect something about his newly awakened power. He had just absorbed that stone, gaining yet another apparently weak skill. In his mind, he was still just a bottom-tier healer. Absolutely nothing had changed, but Liu Sheang was not buying it. He had every intention of helping with the investigation, so he just needed a little push. Right then, a young woman joined the conversation, claiming Mr. Liu was far too aggressive, and that the young man was no stranger. Chen Jan could not figure out who she was, but the woman added that Song Ran was acting totally different lately. It turned out she was Zhao Jinyan, chief of the Hunter Association's own investigation unit, once the young man finally let them inside his apartment and everyone settled down, a wave of burning questions filled Chen Jan's mind. Did they really come all this way just because? He cleared that troll mine, meaning his rapid growth did not matter to them. After all, there was absolutely nothing wrong with getting stronger so quickly. Or maybe this visit was about that dungeon mutation that hit the rookie squad a few days ago, or maybe the crazy incident with the hidden boss. Pouring some hot tea, Xiao Jinyan told the young man not to worry. He had zero connection to the mutation, and Chen Jan was not responsible. For the team's tragic death, the association actually uses a hidden tracking system to track dungeons, meaning they already know about every single event. Unless a player reveals it, at that, the chief decided to drop her trump card. She asked Chen Jan if he wanted to know the truth about his mother's mysterious death. This sudden revelation about secret cameras left him completely frozen. His mind raced. After all, the actual truth about her tragic death was that the official case had hit a complete dead end, and that was why Chen Jan became a hunter, seeking both answers and vengeance. However, Xiao Jinyan explained they could not share the files yet. He simply did not have enough hunter points to unlock such classified information just yet. In fact, given the hunter's current rank, he still has a long and difficult way to go before learning anything. Luckily, a special seasonal dungeon is opening soon, if Song Ran agrees. To join this massive world-class event, he can easily secure tons of hunter points in the Sea of Forgetfulness, leaving the player with a heavy choice. Facing a crucial choice to make things better given his recent feats, Song Ran's rank would get a massive upgrade if he joined, easily matching gold rank standards. He wasted no time, agreeing, saying he would cooperate fully to uncover his mother's case. He would definitely remember the name of that dungeon, the Sea of Forgetfulness. Later, Shai recounted exactly how everything had happened. She believed that Song Ran's power had grown exponentially since then. Hearing this, the Clover Guild leader warmly thanked her for that. She did an outstanding job. Judging by her report, this rising star had become incredibly strong in record time. On top of that, he faced an overpowered boss way above the dungeon level and somehow managed to defeat it. The leader was fully convinced he was a prime candidate for the prestigious Alpha League. According to the former guild leader, an Alpha player must possess a unique red interface, which acts as an exclusive feature. Their dungeon system is completely different, meaning they now need to act. They had to keep a close eye on this guy. It was a shame he did not want to sign up immediately, since Song Ran was a massive opportunity to boost their guild, but when dealing with highly critical matters like joining or raising their rank, they had to tread carefully. After all, no one knew in advance how a player would behave or what they might do later on. However, right now, the Clover Guild had far more urgent issues to handle. They had slipped down to a minor media-level guild, but once their power was fully unleashed, every single player would face a monumental challenge. They would have to maintain their position among the elite guilds at any cost, and to achieve that, they had to clear the seasonal dungeon. This time, it was the Sea of Forgetfulness. Shoei listened intently to every single word she was told. She was a top-tier warrior and incredibly loyal. Meanwhile, the Hunter Association lobby was packed. Players talked in tight groups, discussing strategic plans and cleared dungeons. In the crowd, Chen Jan stood completely alone as usual. He wore a cap, glasses, and a dark hooded jacket, desperately hoping to blend in. He felt like a famous celebrity trying to escape eager fans. Just the night before, while speaking with officers of the Hunter Association, he asked what exactly they wanted him to do. The chief explained that she was unable to evaluate or upgrade rankings remotely, so considering Song Ran's unique situation, she booked a special slot. When the time was right, their representatives would reach out to Chen Jan and guide him through the process. Later on, disguised as quietly as possible, the young man made his way to the office, but as he approached the designated room with a quiet, modest look, he opened the door, offered a polite greeting, and prepared to introduce himself. Sitting at the main desk was a merchant named Byron, puffing on a cigar with his boots propped up, loudly claiming he had been waiting for Song Ran for an absolute eternity. Without warning, the merchant moved. He suddenly hurled his heavy metal ashtray straight at Chen Jan, but watch this, the merchant darted forward like a rocket, actually overtaking the flying object, and that was not the craziest part. In a flash, he kicked it away. executing a lightning-fast strike while demanding the boy show his true strength. Fortunately, Chen Jian reacted instantly, slapping the deadly projectile away from his face. The redirected tray smashed clean through the glass, shattering the window. The wall cracked instantly, leaving the entire structure heavily damaged. Chen Jian stared at the flashy stranger, demanding to know his name and business. He desperately wanted to know what this intruder wanted from him. The pink-suited man tipped his hat, stating he was there simply to test the boy's power. That was his only priority. Chen Jian immediately realized that the association president had dragged him straight into a highly suspicious scheme. Absolutely nothing made sense, but he was sure of one thing. Standing before him was an exceptionally rare awakened who possessed incredible speed and reflexes. Suddenly, the strange merchant reached out toward the boy, wanting to verify if this rookie truly deserved his title. They stood face to face. Chen Jian gripped his sword, utterly confused. It felt as if all the oxygen was suddenly vacuumed out of the room. High-level air magic took hold. Chen Jian realized he was facing some sort of sudden, dangerous trial. Rocks swirled, but the young warrior effortlessly smashed them. He shattered them midair, then confidently warned the mysterious stranger. Chen Jian said he had no desire to cause permanent injuries. The merchant burst into loud laughter, highly amused by the warning. He chuckled, claiming he had never heard such a hilarious threat. Ignoring the mockery, Chen Jian activated his special balanced sword skill. He swung hard, attempting to obliterate every airborne rock at once. But the stranger effortlessly blocked the glowing blade with one finger. He called the kid arrogant. Chen Jian froze. His sword's special effect completely failed. Talk about a reality check. Easily flicking the weapon away, the stranger asked if he truly thought he could ever deal damage. This pink-suited merchant warned that the world is far too brutal. 1 microsecond of hesitation, death. He pointed out that Chen Jian constantly hesitates to kill his opponents. Holding back might seem noble, but it actually insults a true rival. Without warning, the merchant drove a heavy fist straight into his gut. The impact sent Chen Jian flying, leaving him agonizing on the floor. He lay there seething. He refused to stay down. Standing back up, he grew tired of the endless lecturing. This talkative merchant was incredibly annoying, but Chen Jian kept his focus. Looking through a nearby window, he couldn't believe his own eyes. Somehow they had teleported straight to the Hunter Association building roof. The pink-suited man bragged about the immense gap in their capabilities. He hadn't even unleashed his real power. Chen Jian glared up. It was infuriating to admit, but this opponent could also fly. Flying was definitely impressive, but his true goals were still unknown. The merchant chuckled, noting that Chen Jian was far too weak. Since it was a mismatch, he offered to simplify the test. If the young player survived a single hit, he would pass. Chen Jian clenched his fists. This was pure disrespect. Lately, everyone seemed to look down on him. Fed up with the insults, he decided to swap his active class. He activated his assassin form, followed by his life-draining skill. This boosted his physical strength, agility, and overall defensive stats. Chen Jian swore he would never let another soul look down on him. The merchant watched the sudden aura shift, visibly impressed by the kid. There was definitely a massive reservoir of hidden power inside him. If he was this capable, then Song Ran was a worthy challenger. Sparing enemies only insulted them, but Chen Jian still preferred mercy. The merchant mused that human fate is like a drifting stone. To survive the heavy flow of time, Chen Jian must conquer this trial. He unleashed lightning, summoning a massive tornado. Chen Jian watched the terrifying whirlwind, completely clueless about why he had to fight it. Before long, the fierce tornado engulfed the city with overwhelming force. The ground shook violently, feeling exactly like the terrifying aftermath of a massive nuclear explosion. Chen Jian doubted this was the merchant's skill. This was highly likely just a clever, dangerous distraction. But the merchant landed directly on the rooftop, absolutely insisting that the trial must continue. He approached the young man with a calm, smug look. Given how things turned out, he officially decided that Song Ran had successfully passed his trial. This entire situation was becoming incredibly bizarre, leaving Chen Jian completely in the dark. Having absolutely no clue what was actually happening, he demanded to know his true power rank. But the merchant casually brushed it off, saying rank was irrelevant. The real goal here was simply determining if Song Ran was even ready for an official evaluation. Honestly, the strange man was doing this purely out of interest. With that statement, the eccentric merchant turned around and slowly began walking away from him. He was done playing foolish games, especially with a massive, mysterious explosion rocking the area. The stranger in the pink suit advised Chen Zhan to take a close look at the city. Something highly unusual was happening, and Chen Zhan quickly turned around. He could not believe his eyes because the entire landscape looked completely different. Look at that, a massive portal just opened on the streets, looking like the ancient gray gates. Those gates appeared 50 years ago, meaning siege mode was triggered early. Team G headquarters recorded highly bizarre seismic readings. Panicked scientists watched the massive screen as the entire staff gathered around. Absolutely nobody in the room understood what had happened or why the alarm was blaring. A girl reported that a deadly siege portal had just been spotted. It was active inside the city, which everyone thought was completely impossible. According to their calculations, they had time. There was at least a full month left before this massive gate was supposed to open. The commander ordered everyone to stay calm and gather immediate intel first. They needed to analyze the situation before making any plans. He ordered the observation team to compare this incoming data with their actual scientific models. Meanwhile, the communications team immediately contacted all active hunters nearby. Down the long hallway, Chief Zhao was rushing forward when her assistant caught up with her. Her panicked assistant, Mr. Luo, immediately began reporting the grim news. He confirmed that the city had prematurely entered lockdown mode. This was an absolute disaster for their industry. Zhao immediately spun around, telling her assistant to page the commander-in-chief. She wanted the commander-in-chief warned that the Hunter Association chief was coming. The woman was extremely alarmed, terrified that they were once again running far too late. Back on the roof, Chen Zhan demanded details about the premature siege mode. He wanted to know how these deadly monsters emerged and quickly destroyed everything around them. Also, he was deeply curious about why the gate had opened early. But the merchant casually blamed it on some minor calculation mistake. To him, the exact cause did not matter. Even if the siege started early, they had to deal with it now. Normally, veteran players would rush to help the people, but today was different. Only a few greenhorn newbies stood by the gray gates. The merchant eyed Chen Zhan with sheer curiosity, smiling warmly, while the young man stood there completely baffled. To make things worse, the merchant's next words sounded incredibly bizarre. He admitted Chen Zhan had survived plenty of harsh trials and achieved greatness. But his current power was still too weak for the Sea of Oblivion. That meant taking an immediate evaluation on the headquarters' third floor. There, inside the Hunter Association, a massive portal leads straight to the Sky Tower. A hunter's official rank depends entirely on the highest floor they can climb. Before Chen Zhan could process this, the merchant grabbed his jacket with a tight grip and dragged him toward the roof's edge, leaving him utterly confused by the rush. Once his rank was officially set, he could return here to grind for experience. The wealthy merchant even promised Chen Zhan unlimited free access to the zone. But first, the young man had to enter the tower and wait out the storm. He was ordered to stay inside until the Sea of Oblivion finally began. And that's when things took a bizarre turn. The system started glitching out. It warned that a premature siege mode had triggered an early monster invasion. A siege beast had spawned, and the Hunter Association put out a massive bounty. Just then, a live stream from the popular hunter Xiaoi loaded up. She was broadcasting the terrifying beast live, while other desperate players tried to fight it. The rampaging siege monster had already reduced the entire area to absolute rubble. Determined to do her duty, Xiaoi prepared to leap directly into the chaotic battle. She eagerly asked her fans for donations and stream subscriptions. The merchant noted that, as expected, the bounty on this beast was incredibly high. If the Elite Alpha League failed, numbers would be their sole hope. He tried to explain further, but the young man was no longer paying any attention. Chen Zhan declared he was heading out to slay the boss right away. Countless rival hunters would arrive soon, and he wanted to claim that top prize first. He wanted to fight to the absolute end. Bowing his head, he quickly apologized for ditching the merchant, admitting that his official rank was the last thing on his mind, even though he still had no idea who this mysterious man actually was. He felt truly grateful to the stranger in the pink suit for helping him. With tower access granted, Chen Zhan stepped forward, ready to leap into the portal. The merchant teased him, assuming he was just rushing to save his streaming partner, Shioi. Since they cleared the troll mine together, but the young man shook his head. His motives were far simpler, he just wanted that sweet bounty money. Let's shift gears for a second, far away in a peaceful town. A deeply anxious Joel Jin quickly approached Master Du, glad she found him. The old commander, Junani, greeted her with a warm smile. He assumed she had come because of the city siege, and Zhao wanted to know his thoughts on the matter, her worry clearly showing. Junani admitted there was absolutely no point in hiding the truth any longer. Everyone already suspected that the early siege mode was caused by a system glitch. To keep their plans on track, they had to put out a massive bounty, and then immediately deploy an elite expedition force to handle the beast. It was necessary to quickly build a barrier within a 3-kilometer radius of the portal that should keep them safe until the main battle begins. The girl realized that gathering a massive expedition team was completely impossible. Once the brutal siege mode begins, monsters will start pouring from the portal. Even if the active players hold the line for a few weeks, they cannot survive the main monster horde. This means humanity only has a few weeks left. The commander-in-chief confirmed that if they do nothing during this critical window, the entire city will be totally wiped out. Currently, the Alpha League is busy, meaning the remaining players must fight like hell just to buy a little time. He then asked how the special mission he gave to Zio Jin was actually progressing. The girl confidently replied that she already had strategic plans ready for the Sea of Forgetfulness, but nothing was fully guaranteed to work. This is where things get interesting. The guy's name is Song Ran, and lately, very few newly awakened ones have appeared. The Hunter Association is hiding a lot from Song Ran. Clearing out the Sea of Forgetfulness could help him grow and unleash his true power, but she still wanted to clarify some details about the massive city portal, desperate to head back there right away. However, the commander-in-chief stopped her, saying it was totally useless. The merchant Byron was currently there, and they just had to hand over control. Jay then reported she had just received Byron's bizarre request for unlimited security access to the Sky Tower for Song Ran. Even the merchant gets how bad things are. If the players mess up in the sea dungeon, Byron gets sent on a suicide run. But right then, the commander-in-chief starts coughing violently, cutting his speech short. The old man looks incredibly frail, completely drained of his strength. Catching his breath, he invites Zio Jin to sit down for a moment. He wants to share some tea, knowing there is never a perfect moment for peace. But outside, the city center is turning into a total war zone. People are screaming and running for their lives down the chaotic streets. Everyone is trying to escape the massive beast that just burst from the portal. This giant monster is laying waste to the city with its colossal axe. It swats buildings aside, ignoring the tiny humans scurrying below like ants. The players step up to fight, but they can do absolutely nothing. They can't even scratch the boss's shield, yet their leaders demand they keep pushing. Meanwhile, a taxi finally pulls up right near the danger zone. The terrified driver warns his passenger to stay away, refusing to even take his money. Realizing this might be his absolute last ride, Chenjin steps out anyway. He runs through the ruined streets, pushing past the panicked crowds fleeing for safety. The sheer scale of destruction is way worse than he ever expected. Now he's standing right in front of the colossal siege monster. Chenjin knows his basic healer class won't cut it here, so he instantly swaps to his assassin form, but then a sudden shout rings out. Nearby, people are screaming that they see a girl trapped inside one of the windows. Shattered as the girl's apartment building began to collapse, and the child took a desperate leap, plunging from the high-floor apartment. The child's fall and death were inevitable. Can watch this nightmare unfold, utterly helpless, wondering what to do first. Right then, someone activated a pet skill, granting him insane speed. The summoned beast immediately transformed into a massive werewolf, boosting its physical power before rushing off to intercept the falling child. The little girl was plummeting from a great height at terrifying speed, but soon the werewolf's massive, powerful paw reached out to catch her. A second later, the beast landed safely on the road, cradling the terrified child close to its chest. This time, everything ended perfectly for the girl. Chenjin knew exactly who he was going to meet on these streets, but get this, she was still broadcasting live. Shioi mentioned that the guy stood out from a distance carrying 2 distinct blades. Meanwhile, her viewers were absolutely screaming to send donations for saving the child. Chenjin turned to the girl and asked how she was holding up and what she thought of it all. Shioi replied that she was feeling amazing and had some big plans for this fight. Plus, she had a highly reliable and loyal friend right beside her, but truth be told, she had already taken a scratch, which was nothing compared to the runaway boss. Causing absolute chaos on the city streets, Chenjin immediately activated his healing skills to restore the girl's health, even though she claimed it barely hurt at all. While casting the spell, Chenjin asked how other players were holding up against the massive siege monster. Shioi admitted that in her eyes, the situation looked incredibly grim. After the announcement went up from the Hunters Association, around 30 players arrived. They quickly set up their defenses, but it soon became clear that their attacks did absolutely nothing. There were plenty of elite hunters on the scene, yet the monster had a passive defense that heavily reduced all physical and magical damage. In addition, the beast was immune to status debuffs. The players still had no idea how to shatter its barrier. Chenjin thought for a moment, and then turned to Shioi, saying he needed help from her werewolf pet. And he wanted them to launch him high into the sky above the colossal boss. Shioi protested, warning him that this was reckless since they were dealing with a supreme rank beast, but he was not about to listen. He believed they just needed to attack first, then figure out the rest in battle. The middle of the action, Shioi knew there was no arguing with him. Turning to her camera, she announced to her stream that she was signing off. The chat went wild with protests, screaming that the real show was just starting since Song Ran was here to turn this around. Now watch, Shioi decided to trust Song Ran completely. She immediately began activating her skills, preparing to carry out his insane request. Suddenly, she was distracted by the roar of a motorcycle engine and a loud voice demanding everyone clear the path. The loud-mouthed biker was some unknown player who refused to let anyone block him. He did not care about the siege monster, only the massive rewards. He revved the engine, picking up massive speed as he charged straight toward the monster like a human missile, glancing back at the other players. He mockingly stuck out his tongue, making fun of their hesitation. Song Ran understood the situation perfectly. Without wasting any time, he immediately launched a brutal attack as Shioi was. She felt quite unhappy, feeling like just a pet summoned by Song Ran. The other players desperately tried to reach the siege monster. Their guild leader set off huge explosions nearby, but it was completely useless. None of the players understood how its shield actually worked. Suddenly, their attention was completely pulled away, and everyone stared up at the sky, their mouths wide open in pure shock. They spotted a motorcyclist who had sped off a building roof and jumped straight toward the giant monster, midair. The daring player ditched his ride and found himself face to face with the enemy. The motorcyclist activated his blade mastery technique as he flew toward the massive siege monster. The young man landed a quick double strike, then bounced back onto the asphalt to gauge his damage. It seemed like a tiny bee buzzing past a giant elephant that barely even noticed it. Behind him, his abandoned bike hit the road and exploded. Now the guy was left completely without his main vehicle, and the giant beast did not even bother to turn around, totally ignoring the player. It had taken 0 damage. It was really just a shame about his wrecked ride. Furious, the player prepared to strike again. Nearby, the girl yelled that his efforts were completely useless, saying not even 100 hits would scratch the beast, but the stubborn motorcyclist refused to listen. He told her to stop talking and just keep on attacking if they wanted real results. Meanwhile, Song Ran ignored everyone entirely. He just wanted to defeat the monster and was quickly closing in on it, picking up speed. Darky followed close behind the young player, completely ready to play his part. Salt, Shioi activated her incredible werewolf transformation once again and prepared to boost Song Ran as high as possible above the towering siege monster. The massive siege monster was still safe inside its protective dome. Song Ran suddenly took off into the air, gaining speed and launching off the hard asphalt. Once it was clear that Song Ran was not rising any higher, Darky extended his massive paws and pushed the player, giving him a huge boost to rise. Even higher, Song Ran shot upward, preparing to attack the giant monster, though he did not understand how that barrier worked. The motorcyclist glared at the other player, unable to comprehend how he had managed to get ahead. He immediately activated his blade mastery technique, intending to steal the kill and secure the victory. Song Ran approached the shimmering protective dome and tried to pierce With his twin blades, but as expected, it had absolutely no effect. Yet the young warrior refused to give up. He activated a devastating critical attack, then added his precision strike skill. Suddenly, it seemed as if his blade sank directly into the seemingly impenetrable shield, and it worked. The young man managed to reach the giant monster's massive chest and plunge his sharp daggers deep inside. Blood spurted in all directions, and the giant beast let out an agonizing scream. The protective barrier instantly shattered into tiny fragments like a glass window, and Song Ran felt himself falling from a massive height. Shioi watched the intense battle closely and sent Darky to rescue Song Ran. As a swift and powerful werewolf, he immediately leaped toward the falling player and grabbed the young man under his arms. With his massive paws, soon both the werewolf and Song Ran landed safely on the asphalt. The siege monster's shield was completely shattered, meaning the battle could finally resume. All of the players watching the scene were absolutely overjoyed. The shield was finally down, giving everyone a real shot at survival. The motorcyclist stood there completely shocked, staring at the shattered shield. He kept shouting to the crowd that this unknown guy was incredibly strong. That strength was the only reason the barrier broke, prompting him to charge right back. He charged forward to strike again, before those flying daggers could even cool. Seeing this, the other players finally got their act together and rallied. They coordinated a massive assault, striking the giant siege monster from every angle. Wind blasts, heavy sword thrusts, and blazing fire spells lit up the battlefield. The motorcyclist unleashed his best blade skill, desperate to steal the final kill. But right before his sword connected, his face twisted into sheer frustration. It turned out the massive siege boss was already dead, completely stealing his thunder. Everyone watched in utter disbelief as the hothead immediately started throwing a massive tantrum. He screamed for an explanation, throwing a fit and demanding justice for his kill. He insisted that since he broke the barrier, nobody else had any right to touch it. He spat out a wave of angry insults and would have kept going on. But another player got sick of his whining and decided to set the record straight. He pointed out that someone else entirely had shattered the shield and killed the beast. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at a suspicious player who was quietly slipping away. He was holding 2 daggers, trying his absolute best to look casual and blend in. It finally clicked for the motorcyclist that things had gone completely sideways. Not only did he lose his precious bike, but he was also totally humiliated in public. Seething with rage, he pointed at Song Ran and loudly swore to hunt him down. But Song Ran completely ignored the threats, acting like the guy did not even exist. Honestly, watching our mysterious protagonist completely ignore the guy is just hilarious. Just then, a girl approached the angry biker and told him he should probably start running. She advised him to escape while he still could, rather than wasting time venting his anger. She activated her specialized drone, commanding Bixie to immediately switch into combat mode. The drone transformed, leaving her holding a massive quantum cannon. This high-tech gear belonged to a brilliant architect from the Huanu Guild. Her name was Suke, and she looked incredibly confident holding that heavy firepower. Suke whispered to herself that the big moment had finally arrived. Her hands shook slightly as the intense stress made her heart pound wildly. She felt like it might burst from her chest, but she had come too far. Taking a few steadying breaths, she reminded herself that there was no going back now. Just a few days ago, Suke had returned home expecting to see her brother. Instead, the apartment was completely empty, which made no sense at all. He only went into a low-level dungeon and should have been back hours ago. Panicking, Suke desperately tried, calling his phone to make sure he was all right. But the line was completely dead, only offering a cold, automated message to try later. She spent the entire night calling over and over with zero success. As the hours ticked by, she feared some terrible tragedy had occurred. Maybe his raid group ran into unexpected danger inside that simple gate. Suke knew she had to take matters into her own hands right away. If the official reports were delayed, she would just find the truth herself. Her plan was simple: hack the Hunter Association databases to steal the dungeon logs. Inside the computer room, Suka felt quite confident she would find exactly what she wanted. The girl booted up the hacking program, her voice steady as the system responded. It launched the Jerusalem program, bridging straight into the Hunter Association database. Once inside, she immediately started searching for files on Suyuhai's dungeon raids. Access was granted. The files showed her brother had only ever done one raid. Suka immediately began a deeper analysis to pull the raid details. She pulled the data and started decrypting, but at the last split second, a bright red warning window popped up. Suka lacked the required access rights. The Hunter Association network had already triggered its third security protocol. Suka stared in complete disbelief. This was supposed to be a routine raid. Yet for some strange reason, access to this specific dungeon was restricted. Suka quickly cut the feed and began a self-wipe. A system rollback was already kicking in, leaving Suka deeply shaken. Locked out completely, she had no clue what happened inside that dungeon. But one thing was clear, something terrible must have happened to her brother. If she could find the other raid members, she could still track them down. She could use their connection to follow the cleanup team's progress. Suka reminded herself that she was an architect. She would find another way. Suka spent the entire night glued to her screens, desperately searching for answers. But the grim reality hit her. Not a single player had any access rights. Every shred of data about that active dungeon raid was heavily classified. Everything was locked tight, completely hidden from ordinary users. Suka felt utterly helpless. Despair washed over her. She had absolutely no idea how to reach her brother now. She could not even get a single update, but she had to stay strong. Suka could not afford to panic. She had to keep searching for alternatives. Time slipped away completely until her empty stomach finally broke her focus. Realizing she had to pause, she glanced down at her watch. It was already late morning. Suka took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing mind. If she stayed calm, a solution would surely present itself. Things simply had to go her way. Normally, her brother handled all the cooking, but right now Suka was completely on her own. Deciding to order takeout, she downloaded a food delivery app for the very first time. All she needed to do was type in her home address to get a meal. But after a sleepless, high-stress night, her mind blanked out on her own address. She opened the map to tap her location instead. It was quite pathetic, really. Who would have guessed a brilliant hacker would struggle with this? It is honestly heartbreaking. Worse yet, she was not at home, and the food had to go there. Tears welled up in her eyes. She just could not remember the address. Overwhelmed, Suka threw her phone hard against the floor, shattering the screen. She hated herself for forgetting something so simple that anyone else would know. Just then, her little Bixie drone floated over to comfort her. The machine beeped a warm greeting. Suka pulled it close, hugging it tightly. In that quiet moment, a devastating realization finally hit her hard. She had depended completely on her brother, leaving her utterly helpless now. She could not even feed herself without him, as tears streamed down her face. Suki was completely distraught, but a sudden notification ping immediately caught her attention. A popular streamer named Zio Bai was starting a live broadcast, greeting her viewers. She announced that she would be showcasing an epic battle between two players. And a silver-ranked opponent, Suki tuned in just as Lu Mei was. About to make a desperate, highly risky play just to stay alive, Suki was shocked to see that his opponent, Song Ran, was acting unbelievably cruel and aggressive as if he wanted absolute revenge on her. She immediately searched up all the online information about Song Ran, who kept taunting his rival live on stream. His background was easy to find online. But why was there absolutely nothing about her own brother? She started panicking. Again, soon, Suki uncovered details on the only survivor of that raid, who probably escaped by sacrificing everyone else. Suddenly, a wild idea hit into Suki's mind, giving her a distraction from her endless worries and, at least temporarily, stopped her from obsessing over her lost brother. Suki realized she was the one at fault for being so foolish and naive. She immediately began studying the blueprints. From now on, Suki would be different. She turned to her advanced drone assistant, declaring that from this moment on, Bixie would exist only to help her execute their ultimate revenge and make sure justice was finally served. A few days quickly went by, and the elite members of the Huangtu Guild met. An assistant stepped into the office to report that a mysterious woman wanted to see Hangu in person to talk about joining up. The assistant added that she was a rare architect, a class that was always highly valuable. Hangu was quite surprised, since he usually only kept high-level assassins around. Still, the guild master told him to bring her in, finding it pretty amusing. After all, architects normally just assist during high-risk raids. Instead of standard hunter points, they get paid in association silver cards. earned through contribution points, since they cannot use the system directly. They analyze monster abilities using pure science and other logical theories, instead of raw power. Basically, they are just ordinary humans who want to feel like hunters. Since normal citizens avoid dealing with deadly monsters, architects are incredibly rare. Having such a unique professional knock on their door was highly intriguing. The curious guild master quickly ordered his subordinate to let her in. Moments later, a remarkably delicate-looking young woman walked into the office. She looked like an honors student, wearing a very modest blazer and a fully buttoned-up blouse with thick glasses, introducing herself as an architect. Hengu wanted to know exactly why she wanted to join their ranks. Suki calmly replied that her true target was a man named Song Ran. Her beloved brother had been on the exact same raid team as him. But after that mysterious tragedy, only Song Ran walked out alive. Suki was absolutely certain he had plotted the entire disaster inside. Additionally, seeing how Song Ran crushed and publicly humiliated Lu Mei during that viral stream, completely ruining the reputation of the Hyuntu Guild, made her realize they both shared a massive grudge against the same enemy. A common enemy, Sukai and the guild master shared a unified goal that young man had to pay. In Sukai's eyes, he was directly responsible for her brother's disappearance. Hyuntu listened to her story, but he pretended to be completely indifferent, immediately stating that two crucial points needed sorting first. He confirmed the guild had fully investigated the dungeon incident. Everyone who went inside had met their end except for Song Ran. He told her flat out that her brother was not missing, he was dead. The girl could not hold back her tears, sobbing uncontrollably, completely unable to process what went wrong. Inside that portal, Hyuntu explained that they had not uncovered all the dark details, but they believed similar circumstances had led to Liu Lei's defeat. Second, Song Ran was not a direct enemy to the guild, but an obstacle. Their motto was simple: always punish opponents and fiercely protect their own. Thus, ending Song Ran was not revenge, it was purely about principle. A matter of strict guild law. If, after hearing all this, Sukai still wanted to join, Hyuntu was ready to welcome her. Sukai immediately declared that if this was indeed connected to Song Ran, she wanted to join and seek vengeance, stating she was ready to take him out with her own hands. The girl was already stepping out when the guild master suddenly called her back. He had more to say. As the city's biggest guild, he wanted Sukai to hit B rank in 30 days to secure enough contribution points, urging her to join active group quests. Sukai listened with a cold stare, telling Hyuntu he did not need to coddle her or explain every detail. Like she was a little child, she was no longer a naive girl only good at research. With that, she left the guild master's office. The assistant stepped in, asking if the boss had been too harsh with the innocent girl. Hyuntu did not understand where the issue was. Was his subordinate actually doubting his orders? But the young assistant meant nothing by it. The guild master knew the girl did not actually care about their rules of protecting people. Hyuntu shrugged, stating that he could never allow such a naive girl to join their ranks. Still, the cunning guild master saw a perfect chance to exploit her. Outside, the colossal beast still slumped in the city streets, though its solid shield was completely gone. Every hunter rushed to attack. Determined to finish the job, they hoped to strike while the boss was completely unconscious on the pavement, unleashing every weapon they had, including a projection grenade launcher, a rare diamond-rank weapon on these streets. The rare gear drew instant envy, casting a bright projection that detailed the target's current health, defense ratings, and mana pool. Even its hidden weak points were highlighted, making the assault simple. Excited hunters shouted to the leader that their chance had finally arrived. They had the perfect opening, yet, despite their barrage of heavy fire, the colossal boss began to rise. It had merely caught its breath. On the cold concrete, fully prepared to resume the bloody battle, the leader screamed at her team, desperately ordering them to regroup before it struck. They pressed the attack, no retreating, not even a single step back. Exhaustion weighs heavy, but no one dares to stop now. Disobeying their leader is simply out of the question, so Suk prepares herself. She truly believes the Hyuntu Guild has become her actual home. Earning as many guild points as possible is her absolute top priority. This special reward is the perfect chance, and she intends to seize it immediately. She triggers her superconductivity skill, locking onto the giant target. Standing directly in front of the beast, she unleashes a blast. A clean shot to rip the monster to shreds. Instantly, damage numbers flood the screen. She watches the damage stack up, realizing her strategy is actually working. But suddenly, the massive boss armor gauge begins to flash wildly. A nearby player receives critical combat data and broadcasts it immediately. To his absolute horror, he realized the monster possesses a terrifying defensive trait. The monster can regenerate a shield that grants total immunity to negative status effects. To smash through that barrier, they must unleash extremely high burst damage abilities. Alternatively, they have to focus their attacks on specific physical weak points. The shoulders, lower abdomen, and lower back are wide open. Unless those spots are targeted, that shield will simply recharge, making all efforts useless. In fact, they will have to shatter that shield at least 4 times to win. Talk about a brutal challenge. Powerless on their own, the players begin to panic. Just then, the motorcyclist decides to take a desperate gamble. Right before his eyes, a random guy in glasses somehow shattered the monster's shield. His plan is simple: break the barrier, then launch a devastating counterattack. The biker decides to let Song Ran do the heavy lifting. He decides to let Song Ran break the defense once more before stealing the kill. Now every player present stares at Song Ran, eagerly expecting another miracle. Song Ran reads the room perfectly, but has to deliver some bad news. He tells the group that, unfortunately, he cannot pull off that attack a second time. The players are completely stunned. How is that possible after he already did it once? Song Ran tries to explain his limitations, but the crowd only feels deeply disappointed. How could he refuse to repeat a strategy that obviously worked? Song Ran explains that his highly praised debuff is actually passive. It only triggers after an explosion, leaving him with no active abilities. The players begin to mutter, wondering why he is even on this raid. He has no active combat skills, and he is just a lowly bronze rank player. It seems his initial success at breaking the shield was just a total fluke. However, the guild leader steps in to defend him. That passive debuff is incredibly rare, and now the entire team must help trigger it. A female mage steps up, offering her explosive status skill. A massive swordsman promises to boost Song Ran's attacks. The rest of the players quickly agree to coordinate their powers to win. Naturally, the motorcyclist is the most bitter person in the entire group. That weakling gets all the glory while his motorcycle is ruined. Still, the guild leader makes the final call for a coordinated team effort. It is officially time to combine their forces and completely shatter that annoying shield. Songren breathed a sigh of relief. This attempt would be far easier for him. Gathering immense speed, the young warrior braced himself and charged ahead. Chenjin sprinted right alongside him. The other players immediately rushed in to back up Songren's assault. Everyone unleashed their ultimate skills together. The Seal of Destiny, Archangel Power, and Reboot were all activated. Songren felt massive energy swirling around him. He knew he could not let down his teammates who put their trust in him. He leaped high. Chenjin followed closely. Together, they actually stood a chance at winning. Victory now relied entirely on their perfect coordination and team chemistry. Suddenly, the terrifying beast did not seem so invincible after all. Backed by this massive group buff, Chenjin felt absolutely unstoppable. He aimed to shatter the defensive barrier with one single, devastating blow. Raising his twin daggers high above the beast, Chenjin struck hard. His attack hit home, completely shattering the enemy's protective shield. Instantly, Songren received an alert for unlocking the legendary Blitz achievement. He also unlocked Phantom Shadow, a skill allowing him to blend into darkness. Remarkably, this was the very first active skill he had ever obtained. However, his small mana pool meant he could only use it briefly. Songren quickly analyzed the giant beast, plotting the best angle for his next strike. He saw the massive shield was starting to crack and crumble. Timing it perfectly, he rushed forward and drove his dagger deep inside. After landing multiple quick stabs, he instantly activated his new shadow skill. This allowed him to completely vanish from the monster's line of sight. With the shield broken and the enemy blinded, he could strike anywhere. Sharp fragments of the shattered defense barrier exploded in every direction. Songren felt a massive crystal shard pass straight through his physical body. Here is where it gets crazy. Instead of dying, he felt gravity vanish. This strange sensation felt like he was floating freely in the air. Recognizing his buffs were still active, Songren knew he had to keep pushing. He unleashed his full power, utilizing the stealthy shadow effect to close in. He targeted the enemy's weak spot. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist grew furious. Watching the battle unfold, he realized Songren would claim all the credit. Refusing to stand aside and watch, he charged toward the target. He aimed directly at the weak point to steal the final blow. But before he could get close, another player cut him off. It was a girl wearing glasses, carrying an absolutely massive blaster cannon. She wanted the boss reward too. The motorcyclist unleashed a shockwave attack. But the girl, the brilliant architect, saw it, fired her massive engine-eater cannon. Multiple explosive shells slammed into the monster, dealing heavy damage. The giant beast was clearly slowing down, losing its aggressive and highly energetic state. Players eagerly reported that their synchronized team offensive was working perfectly. They had successfully stripped away the beast's defensive barrier. Seizing the moment, the guild leader ordered an all-out group attack. They could not let the shield regenerate under any circumstances. Moving as one, the entire party surged forward to finish the fight. The beast realized its time was running out, triggering its rage mode once again. It was back-to-back rage. Now the players knew they had to start over. Every bit of progress was gone, and this giant was about to get even stronger. Everyone knew the players standing closest to it were as good as dead. But Songran was already moving, his shadow ability fully activated. He did not care about the terrifying transformation the monster was undergoing. Slipping into his assassin form, he silently closed the distance, weapon glowing with power. His ordinary blade was gone, replaced by a single weapon radiating absolute destruction. With incredible grace, the young man leaped high over the Titan's massive body. He locked onto its weak spot and drove his blade deep, unleashing a crimson spray. Blood rained down as the watching players stared in absolute disbelief. Who on earth was this guy, using an assassin form while wielding multiple swords? Then they noticed something weird. The giant beast was actually slowing down. Its massive limbs were suddenly moving like they were trapped in mud. Suki gasped as she realized Songran's blade carried a petrification effect. Her jaw dropped. How many insane passive skills did this guy actually have? Right then, the boss's giant arm turned to stone and shattered into pieces. A massive hail of rock rained down, burying the battlefield in heavy debris. Through the dust, Songran touched down completely unharmed. Spotting the glass-wearing Suki nearby, he told her to get back because it was too dangerous. Without waiting for a reply, the young man spun around to launch another strike. He did not even give Suki a single second to argue or speak up. And trust me, the motorcyclist was glad that terrifying rage was finally fading. Now was his chance to strike. Meanwhile, the guild leader gathered her forces. She stood tall, ready to issue the command that would end this. She ordered everyone to charge together and launch one final, massive assault. The players surged forward as one, throwing absolutely everything they had at the beast. Spells and blades rained down, slowly chipping away at its remaining health pool. The giant was bleeding out. Seizing the moment, Songran leaped into the air. He brought his blade down, landing a massive, final critical hit on the target. A glowing system alert flashed before him. The raid boss was officially defeated. Instantly, the rewards screen popped up, highlighting the top contributor of the raid. Songran secured the absolute highest score from the Hunters Association. Exclusive shop items and private VIP rooms were unlocked just for him. Cheers erupted instantly. Players began jumping and celebrating wildly in the streets. Every single raid participant walked away with some incredibly valuable loot. These legendary items would keep them set for a very long time. But for Songran, walking away with free gear was not his main focus. He quickly threw on his glasses, attempting to slip away before the crowd noticed. But the sharp-eyed motorcyclist caught him in the act and shouted his name. Since they just took down a giant monster together, they should grab some food. He even waved over the other players, telling them they were welcome to join. Despite holding a much higher rank, the guy was incredibly down to earth. He specifically singled out one girl who had really carried her weight. Looking straight at Suki, he told her he would love to have her along. Suka turned down his invitation to join his guild, leaving him absolutely stunned by her rejection. Suka quickly caught up to thank him for saving her. The grateful girl extended her hand, repeating her deep thanks. Songran was completely shocked. He stared at her before politely stating he was also glad to meet her. Following their polite introductions, the young man finally revealed his identity to her. Suka froze in absolute shock. She had no idea who she was actually standing in front of. At the last second, Suka pulled her hand back in disbelief. Could this guy really be the legendary Song Ran who survived that horrific, bloody dungeon massacre? The same warrior who challenged the massive Huangtu Guild. Other players instantly recognized the name, whispering about the fighter who dominated the arena. Shioi pushed through the massive gathering crowd of players. She was incredibly happy to see Song Ran, whom she had grown quite close to. But escaping now was going to be an absolute nightmare. Song Ran was completely surrounded by players. His fans recognized him, and honestly, good luck escaping that massive crowd of admirers. Suka quietly turned to Bixie, ordering her assistant to prepare. She triggered attack mode, transforming Bixie into a deadly dark revolver. Holding the gun high over her head, she was fully determined to finish her dark secret mission. Suka aimed the weapon right at Song Ran, commanding him to immediately take off his cap. She demanded his glasses, looking absolutely deadly and serious, but Song Ran refused to move an inch. Seeing this defiance, Shioi instantly raised her glowing magic wand. She assumed the stranger had lost her mind, but Suka rudely shut her down. She ordered Shioi to shut up and freeze, or else she would finish off Song Ran right there. The surrounding players quickly noticed the glowing weapon and could not understand why anyone would cause trouble. Why would anyone pick a fight with the hero who had just saved everyone? The crowd felt this woman was completely unhinged and needed to be stopped. They wanted to protect their savior, the heroic Song Ran, from this dangerous, heavily armed stranger. But Suka was completely unhinged, screaming at the entire crowd of players to not move a muscle. If anyone so much as twitched, she threatened to blow Song Ran's head off. Song Ran saw her cold eyes and realized it was best not to argue. So the young warrior slowly reached up and began removing his glasses and his dark cap. Suka stared intently at his face, scanning every detail as his disguise came off. She gasped in complete shock as she finally recognized who stood before her. Talk about an absolute shocker of a reveal. The mighty hero Song Ran was actually Chen Jan. Suka revealed her beloved brother, Su Yu Hai, died inside a dungeon with Chen Jan. She demanded to know exactly what had happened inside that horrific dungeon. She wanted a straight answer to what the hell had happened in there. Chen Jan felt the name Su Yu Hai sound incredibly familiar and desperately racked his brain. Suddenly, he remembered a gold-ranked warrior who was gathering materials for his sister. Connecting the dots, Chen Jan understood her tragic motive and analyzed his options. If she pulled the trigger from this close, dodging the bullet would be virtually impossible. Even his phantom shadow skill would be completely useless in this tight spot. He simply had no way of predicting when her finger would pull the trigger. At the exact same time, explaining what actually went down in that dungeon was extremely complicated. That horrific tragedy inside the dungeon was definitely not Chen Jan's fault. He was just a victim of cruel circumstances, desperately wishing he had been strong enough to save them. Kept the other players safe, they all would have cleared the dungeon, gone home to their loved ones, and lived their normal lives as if nothing went wrong. Now Chenjin feels deeply guilty about the tragic outcome. He failed to protect the squad, and if he does not take responsibility for their deaths, he can never forgive himself. The young healer speaks up. He apologizes directly to Suk, explaining that a powerful hidden boss suddenly appeared. In the depths, Chenjin admits it was all his fault for being too weak. He just could not heal everyone, but Suk only wants one thing now: to bring her beloved brother back, the one who meant everything to her. Suk aims her gun straight at Song Ran, demanding he bring her brother back right now. Suddenly, a loud gunshot echoes, freezing everyone in pure shock. It seems completely impossible, but the wild scene plays out right before them. They have no choice but to accept this terrifying reality. Amazingly, the motorcyclist manages to slice the flying bullet with his sword midair. He warns Suk that everyone fighting alongside him is a valued comrade. There is no way he will let her kill Song Ran. He calmly rolls up his sleeves, ready to throw hands for Song Ran if things get ugly. Seeing this, the other players quickly speak up to defend Song Ran too. They shout that Suk is completely unhinged for trying to commit murder. Outside the arena, Suk is just an ordinary architect and needs to stop. But right in the middle of this intense standoff, a massive vehicle comes roaring down the street. It screeches to a violent halt directly in the center of the square, breaking up the heated player brawl. Instantly, the crowd recognizes the heavy armored ride. It belongs to the Hunters Association. It is their rapid response division, and they look serious. The authorities clearly heard about the trouble. The heavy door swings open. Lu Sheong steps out, immediately demanding a megaphone from his crew. His tense face tells everyone that a major emergency has just struck. Some players still want to complain to him about the drama with Song Ran, but the tense investigator is not here for petty arguments. Everyone quietly shuts up, waiting to hear the dark news this department chief has. He raises the loudspeaker, desperate to grab the crowd's full attention. This is not a drill. He needs everyone to listen right now. Lu Sheong addresses the crowd and orders them to evacuate immediately. A massive, unexplained energy spike has just been detected nearby. The system is completely glitching out. The entire area is highly unstable. An anomalous monster portal is about to spawn right where they stand. Suk continues to glare at her sworn enemy, but her focus shifts. But wait, there is no time for personal grudges now. The entire city is about to face total annihilation from the portal. If they do not move fast, everyone will be wiped off the map. A few clueless players still stand around, not realizing the danger. They cannot believe a dangerous portal would open in a populated city like this. But the veteran fighters waste zero time arguing and bolt instantly. Panic spreads as everyone screams at the crowd to run for their lives. Run away and save their lives immediately. After all, if that portal actually opened, the girl had no time to say another word. Suddenly, the fallen monster started to tremble. Its dead corpse vibrated violently right there on the ground. Meanwhile, inside the huge dungeon hall, the boss sat completely motionless on his giant throne, staying perfectly still, looking as if he were fast asleep. Right then, the remains of the dead beast in the city began to shake as a red cloud formed around it. This glowing mist meant the creature was burning through its very last bits of energy. It was trying to force the surrounding space to warp and expand, all to tear open a massive portal. Right then, the players knew they were too late. They could not stop what was coming and had zero chance of running. Once it opens, it sucks in everything around it, absolutely everything. The players and local citizens had slowly started to forget this basic rule, mostly because the advanced monitoring systems supposedly had everything under perfect control. But right now, it was obvious those safety systems had completely failed. Either the tech glitched out, or something far worse was happening behind the scenes. One young warrior unsheathed his blade, shouting that he would take care of it. But he never got the chance. The rift tore open with a blinding, devastating explosion. Those standing closest to the portal died instantly, just vaporized. Song Ran screamed for Shioi to grab his hand as they desperately fought to survive. Even the elite Hunters Association reps felt the terrifying gravitational pull. They were completely helpless, unable to save themselves, let alone anyone else. Then a massive shockwave ripped through the air with a deafening boom. Everything nearby was instantly shredded, gone, reduced to dust. Meanwhile, back in the quiet dungeon, the heavy guards slowly began to wake up. Out in the real world, the once great city was reduced to absolute ruins. It was nothing but debris scattered across a brutal, barren desert. A few battered survivors coughed through the dust, slowly trying to sit up. Now they knew what the legendary Sea of Oblivion actually looked like. Endless sand, blazing heat, not a single sign of life anywhere. Stating the dungeon instance was processing, and Chen Jan woke up inside the rift. Out of nowhere, a soft voice whispered that it could only guide him this far. He squinted, unable to see who was talking through the blinding white glare. A sweet, smiling little girl stood there, hoping Chen Jan was not upset with her. Chen Jan stood there completely dazed, having absolutely no idea where they were. The child smiled warmly and introduced herself by the name of Doris. She was his personal guide inside the mythical Sky Tower. Chen Jan was stunned. He had no clue how he got here, but the legendary location was finally real. He was in the Sky Tower, but get this, he was completely alone. He looked around, confused about why he had even been drawn here. Doris explained that the rest of his party was stranded back in the desert. But Chen Jan was brought to the tower because he was incredibly special. Anyone else would probably be thrilled to hear a compliment like that. But he just stared, while Doris smiled and claimed she knew his deepest secret. She knew he was desperately searching for the truth about his mother's death. Chen Jan instantly froze, glaring right at her. Suspiciously, he demanded to know how she found out, but Doris simply replied that she knew because it was her job to know every single thing about Chen Jan. She also knew that when he went into that dungeon, everyone except him died, or for example, she knows he was threatened with punishment for something he was not guilty of. She also knows that Chen Jan looks calm on the outside. He secretly carries crushing guilt for the deaths of his friends and constantly struggles to make amends for those sins. Angered, Chen Jan demanded that Doris shut up, demanding to know why she dragged him out here alone. To Doris, the answer is incredibly simple. You see, Chen Jan is an awakened being. Seriously, he is far beyond any hunter, but he is still fixated on past regrets, raw emotions, and duty. Yet once he enters the tower, he is destined to become the next god. Chen Jan just needs to find his own path, even though the heavenly tower has already opened. Doris promises to do this for her Chen Jan, reaching out with a hand clad in a white glove, spreading her fingers, moving them as if controlling some unseen screen. Doris activates the evolution mode within the heavenly tower. Now watch. Right before his astonished eyes, the tower begins to fill with powerful energy. Now it stands completely wrapped in blood-red mist. The players inside the Sea of Oblivion feel terrible, suffering from heavy headaches, sudden weakness, pure exhaustion. Sha desperately searches for Song Ran, but he is gone nowhere. She runs from player to player, asking if anyone has seen Song Ran, knowing for a fact that he saved her. As they plunged into the portal together, one of them tells her he has not seen Song Ran, that blue-haired guy, since they arrived. Right at that moment, he spots Suk. She is alive. She actually survived. Either she is alive, trapped right here in the Sea of Oblivion along with the rest of them. Lu Sheong steps in, refusing to let them fight. They must prepare right now. The first wave of bosses is coming. Appear confused, the players have no idea what he means. What first wave of bosses? Does that mean a second and even a third wave will follow? Lu Sheong explains that although he is not a hunter, he is still an association member who studied all the previous strategies and reports on the Sea of Oblivion, knowing exactly when the first boss would show up. Hunters need to get ready. Suddenly, something begins to stir. It is a massive sandstorm swirling to block their path and keep them from moving forward. Soon, the god of the desert will rise before these lost souls. Lu Sheong quotes from his studied records, and right on cue, the sand clears to reveal an enormous boss towering over the terrified players. Clad in pitch black with two massive wings unfurling behind him, it was Thism from ancient Egypt, who created the Book of the Dead, weighing hearts on his scales to separate good from evil. He demands to know why they have come. This detached god appeared alongside the light of the world, shedding a sacred tear on that very day, from which the entire human race was born. Now they face the guardian of the desert sands. He continues quoting the records, watching the tear take on a partially human form. He melted into the shadows, becoming the scourge of humanity, now a great god. The god of justice stood before them, but they did not understand what message this beast carried. They could feel the storm growing stronger while their physical strength was still completely drained. None of them were in top shape, but they needed to regroup and prepare. Heavy dust covered everything, and a brutal road lay ahead of them. That was when one brave player, that reckless motorcyclist, yelled out that he was ready to go first. He warned that those carrying evil would collapse under the weight of the cosmic scales. Right then, another young warrior was already waiting, blade in hand, ready to challenge the guardian of the Sea of Oblivion. That massive entity watched him closely. As the challenger approached, he abruptly stopped reciting the ancient Book of the Dead, which was forged by the god Thoth, slamming the heavy cover shut. He announced he was ready to pass judgment as huge flames erupted around him. Meanwhile, Chen Jan fought off waves of monsters, using every single ability and resource at his disposal. System screens popped up, congratulating him on defeating the Lord of Fire and clearing the 9th floor. Honestly, things had been pretty easy up to this point, so far. According to Doris, the Sky Tower is a unique dungeon with infinite floors, where the monsters slowly grow more powerful. A boss waits on every 10th floor, and beating them is the only way to clear it. Of course, the ultimate reward is determined entirely by how many floors you manage to clear. Now, Chen Jan was heading straight for the 10th floor, meaning a major boss fight was about to begin. The young man emerged from the thick, bloody mist, incredibly curious about what lay ahead. In the distance, he spotted a quiet figure sitting calmly on the ground. this was the one. Right before his eyes was the first major boss of the Sky Tower, the Guardian of. The Red Soul, sensing someone nearby, the massive tower boss grinned with absolute delight. He laughed, saying someone had finally activated his special combat mode. Chen Jian paused, thoroughly shocked to hear actual human speech coming from a dungeon monster. He had never seen a monster speak fluent human language before, truly bizarre. Chen Jian was amazed. He was only on the 10th floor and already facing a creature with highly advanced intelligence. Trust me, this tower is not as simple as it looks. The boss complained that the annoying unlock conditions had kept him sealed away for almost his entire conscious life, but right now the beast was ready to fight and test his limits. He warned Chen Jian that very few challengers could actually survive. If the young man wanted to advance, he would have to defeat the Red Soul Guardian. The massive monster pulled its giant sword out of the ground, eager for a clash. It had to be taken down, just as some other powerful heroes had done long ago. But Chen Jian shrugged, telling the beast not to make a huge deal out of this. He did not plan to stay long. After all, this was only the 10th floor, the absolute starting point of the tower. The Guardian realized he was being completely underestimated, treated like a basic mob, and it absolutely infuriated him. Still, Chen Jian did not think this boss was any different from the others. Sure, the beast knew a few words, but our young hero wanted to cut the chatter short. He was rushing to reach the next floor and had no interest in wasting precious time. His sheer level of confidence and absolute pride was truly mind-blowing. Stuck on that first boss, his massive self-confidence was tested. This completely outrages the 10th floor boss. He raises his massive hand, tightly gripping his colossal evolved greatsword, ready to end our hero with one devastating blow. The Red Soul Guardian roars out, boasting that Chenjin will remain here on this floor with him forever. Right then, Chenjin triggers his shadow ability. At that exact moment, the boss swings with terrifying force but misses completely, plunging his sword deep into the ground. It is an incredibly unexpected turn. Now the giant boss cannot find his target, but right after, our hero leaps directly onto his back, knowing the giant cannot catch his fleeting shadow. Chenjin slashes hard, making fresh blood spray out from the monster's body, yet the beast sneers that Chenjin is celebrating too early. This is only the beginning. With a roar, the Crimson Guardian stabs his weapon down. He has officially activated his rage state, which Chenjin instantly feels. Unstable energy waves roll out, crackling with the devastating properties of blazing fire magic and absolute berserker madness. The entire boss is now mindless killing machine. Meanwhile, no one over at the Clover Guild gets a single wink of sleep tonight. The leader monitors the emergency broadcast, learning from her informants that the legendary seasonal instance, the Sea of Oblivion, has opened way early. Terrified citizens are already contacting the authorities. Suddenly, the guild leader receives an urgent system notification. To officially register her team for this high-tier instance, they must sign up now. Devastating clues at the scene reveal that almost everything near the newly formed spatial rift got violently dragged inside, including a massive crowd of top-tier hunters battling the siege beast. Suddenly, member calls her in a panic, reporting that Shioi got sucked into the portal of Oblivion. The frantic manager begs to know their plan, but the guild leader stays completely relaxed. She knows Shioi is strong enough that nothing can threaten her safety. Still, they will not abandon her. This dungeon is their ultimate shortcut to reclaim their lost glory and power. The leader immediately orders a full guild mobilization for their epic deployment tomorrow. Over in another sector, Wongu is also deeply calculating his next move. He must take action to preserve his reputation and gain public support. Suka might seem like a complete nobody to them, but she actually fought surprisingly well against that massive siege beast. Naturally, no major guild can ignore this event. Hexuk is ordered to gather everyone, their strongest elites, and march out, always keeping their expanding motto in mind. Wongu only cares about making his faction grow, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the 10th floor boss is absolutely losing his mind with rage. He growls that if this puny player has no other tricks, he is completely unworthy to survive. Chenjin relies on his shadow power once again, trying to stay hidden, but let's be real, underestimating even a first floor guardian is a massive mistake. Luckily, this freshly unlocked shadow passive is proving incredibly clutch as the beast lands another devastating Overhead smash. Somehow, Chenjin manages to slip away, narrowly avoiding the strike. The giant boss believes that without those sneaky tricks, this player is completely worthless and a total disappointment. However, our hero Chenjin, his opponent was clearly underestimating him, but Chen Jan would soon show his true power. What he was capable of. The only disappointment in this fight was the boss. Right from the very start of their clash, Chen Jan realized it pretty quickly. The enemy lacked any real presence, and he had slain far stronger beasts before. Compared to this guy, the young man claimed he had only been testing things. Testing the boss's limits. In terms of sheer strength, the monster was quite average, barely matching the level of a guard, with fire energy that felt incredibly weak. In fact, the demonic sword held far more power than its wielder. Chen Jan was actually quite curious to learn why this boss had been imprisoned in the tower, and how it even happened. The boss muttered that his memories were quite hazy. He only remembered fighting every single challenger who stepped into this cursed place. Before everything reset once again, taking advantage of the brief pause, Chen Jan quietly activated his healing skills to restore his health. He then remarked that if the boss had nothing useful to share, it was time to wrap this up. Honestly, this whole fight had dragged on for too long. Naturally, the boss lost his mind, screaming that he would tear him to pieces right then and there, but Chen Jan, still casually recovering his health, dodged every single desperate strike with absolute ease. Seeing how angry the beast was, he declared he would stop dodging entirely to show his dominance. Talk about an absolute power move. Right then, Chen Jan's body began taking hits, shredding his clothes as dark blood began splattering in every single direction. But even as the relentless onslaught continued, our main character kept regenerating, completely ignoring the pain. The boss was left utterly stunned by his incredible recovery speed, shocked to face such a seasoned professional. But despite the respect, the monster believed this human still deserved to die. Chen Jan agreed, stating that he also planned to end this duel with death. Slowly, the young man reached out and calmly grabbed the incoming sword, triggering his petrification skill, knowing the boss was completely helpless. Without his precious weapon, standing before a massive, petrified colossus, Chen Jan prepared the final strike. The boss watched in complete horror, unable to believe his blade was shattered. Chen Jan simply nodded in agreement, admitting it was a bit rude, but there was literally nothing left of it. With one swift stroke, the young man severed the giant's arm, which instantly exploded into a million tiny fragments. In his final moments, the boss realized he never could have anticipated such terrifying strength from a kid. Perhaps only the high-tier entities on the top floors of the Sky Tower could even match him. Chen Jan reiterated that his foe had been weak, but at least he now had some clues about this tower and its guardians. To this demon, the fight mattered way more than his own life, and for that he earned some respect, but the duel had to end. Chen Jan delivered a finishing blow, lifting the boss's severed head to inspect it closely, wondering if all demons simply had battle madness flowing through their veins. Unable to comprehend any other way of living, yet the monster was still breathing. With his dying breath, he admitted that Chen Jan was incredibly strong and could easily move forward, finding a strange sense of peace in defeat. Relief, he sensed a strange, deep connection growing between them. A player lost forever, trapped by heavy, nagging armor. A monster made only for battle, Chen Jan scoffed. He declared this was not his end. He was heading up. The boss would wait for others. Perhaps they would meet again. At that moment, the severed head spoke of an old vision. He once saw a challenger just as focused as Chen Jan, with those exact same eyes, looking straight ahead with endless hope. But over time, he put on a mask and became a beast. Back then, he only entered the Sky Tower simply to test his skills. Chen Jan was stunned. This monster reasoned like a human. The young man was deeply confused, completely unable to understand what kind of entities lived here. They were completely bizarre. Suddenly, a system notification announced a unique victory reward. For defeating the Red Soul Warrior, he received a bloody shard. Meanwhile, the Hunter Association Hall was packed with gossiping crowds. The dangerous portal to the Sea of Oblivion had opened way early. Sitting in the crowd was Sunha, the Dragon's Guild vice president. He sat in his cloak, calmly waiting with a suitcase. The heat in the Sea of Oblivion was intense as players fought. They kept attacking, but their stamina was running out fast. Even the toughest fighters knew they could not last long. A massive sand tornado shielded the boss, keeping them back. This heavy wind successfully blocked any chance of breaking through. His sand control is highly effective, and trust me, they are in trouble. If this fight drags on, the deadly curse phase triggers. Right on cue, a sudden, blinding headache strikes them. The pain is unbearable. They immediately drop their weapons. They clutch their heads in absolute agony. The trial has begun. This is the scales of accusation. Shoei watched closely. He analyzed the battlefield as the monster gathered more sand. A massive storm whipped up, preparing a devastating strike. It sends a magnetic vibration directly into their skulls. With every passing second, the agony grows far worse. But surprisingly, this pressure does not hit everyone equally. Lu Sheung explained the cruel mechanic behind this magic. It is the balance of sin, one of the three great mysteries. This spell randomly targets half the players with a deadly curse. Once those victims die, the curse immediately spreads to survivors. It is a total wipe unless healers cleanse it. If their healing outpaces the curse, they are saved. The debuff vanishes instantly, but doing that is tough. Every desperate hunter searched for a way to help. The anxious guild leader desperately searched for any healer strong enough to save them. But hope was slim, they just fought a siege monster. With almost no mana left, casting any high-tier healing spells was completely out of the question. They had to find another path to break through that massive sea of sand shield. That barrier protected the boss, and the only viable strategy left was to forcefully suppress the god's power. They needed a high-tier hunter with master-level skills to strike hard, under relentless pressure. His ability reading would shut down, allowing the squad to strike him down and break the curse. Even then, they would still have to survive the third riddle, the real illusion. Before he could explain what that meant, the man suddenly grabbed his head and collapsed. Shioi rushed over to support him, but Liu Sheung was fading fast. He could barely gasp out the word curse. Desperate, the guild leader asked if anyone had strength left to keep fighting. If they did nothing now, they were all going to die in this dungeon. Dying meant real, permanent death, but nobody could move. They knew the end was coming. The terrifying curse was creeping forward rapidly, and everyone knew their time was running out. Suddenly, one hunter stepped up, promising to drag them out of this nightmare. No matter the cost, he told them to ignore the sand wall and prepare for war. Right then, Moss noticed a player targeting his sand tornado. He sneered at the foolish attempt, but suddenly Shioi felt a heavy, crushing impact. It made no sense since the boss was way on the other side. The god just stood there, reading his book of death. Without moving, fully protected by his massive sand tornado. It was absolute chaos. But then, a literal car came flying out of nowhere and slammed straight into the sand wall. Most of the squad was already down, looking completely lifeless on the cold ground. Still, one last hope remained: to kill the boss and avenge their fallen friends. Lone Warrior pushed forward, slowly carving a path toward the boss directly through the deadly sand. Getting close enough, he unleashed his advanced demonic strikes, launching a barrage of heavy sword attacks all around him. To everyone's shock, without that defensive sand shield, the boss was totally helpless and unable to react. He was nothing more than a sand-covered vegetable, but his time was up as Shioi drove her blade deep into the ground. She knew this was a flawless execution with advanced dynamic strikes, instantly interrupting his spell and finishing him off. Shioi looked around in relief as the massive sand wall crumbled away, completely destroyed by that insanely powerful attack. But the survivors could not celebrate yet. A massive real illusion materialized right before them. The god loomed overhead again, roaring that all mortals would perish. He gathered immense, dark demonic energy around himself, launching a devastating strike. The dark magic manifested as a giant, grotesque hand reaching down to crush the surviving players. It was a terrifying sight. Everyone scrambled to escape, but those sharp, clawed fingers swept toward them at insane speed. It was clear that this was pure, concentrated dark magic, but knowing that did absolutely nothing to help them survive. Shioi ran as fast as she could, caught in a sea of oblivion. The boss's treacherous claws prepared to clamp down on her. But wait, Zioi's pet was suddenly summoned, completely fearless of the boss. He leaped right in front, instantly shattering his dark illusion. Now blocking his path, the pet forced the boss's dark spells to shatter completely. His staff crashed to the ground. The player suddenly realized The soul-stealing claw had stopped. No ghost hands were chasing him anymore. He knew that tearing up the Book of Death was totally useless now. It was a mere shadow, but Zioi's loyal pet successfully stopped the boss. The staff was his source of power. The pet snatched it away. Now disarmed, the player screamed at Zioi to order her pet that under no circumstances should the boss touch that staff again. That weapon was his weakness. Without it, his entire illusion would instantly crumble. Zioi got the message. She immediately yelled for her pet to toss the staff. Good boy. He grabbed it tightly with his paws and threw it over. Meanwhile, the demon queen stood tall above her steps. As her minions bowed in silence, the wicked woman relished this majestic moment. Victory was quickly shifting toward the dark forces of the Sea of Oblivion, but suddenly, Zioi shouted that she found the way to defeat the boss for good. The Sea of Oblivion boss was furious. He could feel his absolute defeat drawing closer by the second. In desperation, he frantically chanted from his Book of Death, declaring that the dead must follow his god's dark will. Very soon, those lost souls would begin drifting across the misty river of death. The massive monster screamed his incantation, conjuring what looked like a massive swarm of black birds, but those weren't birds. They were the actual souls of fallen allies. Meanwhile, Shelia was focused, performing a strange and ancient magic ritual. Deep in a trance, she quietly muttered words of immense power. Forbidden dark magic harvested the life force of the fallen to deliver a map-wide lethal blow that would instantly kill everyone. Zioi completed her chant. She marched purposefully forward toward the boss as hundreds of stolen souls swirled around him. Mocking him, she asked the guardian Tudu if he had any desperate moves left, because his dark reign of terror was officially over. The party leader panicked, screaming for Zioi to fall back immediately. The boss was charging up an insanely powerful final strike. A chaotic storm of dark souls whipped around her, trying to break her concentration, but Zioi stood firm. False gods must fall. She wouldn't back down. Finally, her incredible magic reached its absolute peak. A pillar of white-hot fire erupted, piercing the guardian straight through. Zioi laughed like a maniac, muttering wild, nonsensical things about how a custom-story dungeon in the Sea of Oblivion was patched. Just then, a gold system notification flashed across their screens, congratulating the team for defeating the first major boss of the map. They claimed the legendary Staff of Thoth. Instantly, the dark, blood-soaked dungeon floor cleared, the deadly curse was lifted, and their fallen friends began to wake. With the guild leader in Zioi successfully completing the task, the guardian of TH was overthrown, and the distant pyramid lit up with a brilliant flash. A massive wave of fire erupted, leaving the guildmaster standing in utter disbelief. He could not believe this intense duel was over. Sha was pretty pleased, too. She never expected to score such amazing gear in a death trap like this. The dungeon was wild, and Darky came out looking like an absolute superstar. Right then, the leader of the investigation team, Liu Xiong, finally came to his senses, praising the players for their great work and announcing their next move. They would be transported directly to a new zone, the Farnado Oasis. The association was already rallying the guilds to launch a massive, coordinated assault. For now, the players could safely recover in the Sea of Oblivion.